Chapter 1791. Fellow Taoists, you too are truly my benefactors. Not only did you give me an ancient flower, but you also helped me discover the entrance to the primordial divine mountain. In order to thank you for your kindness, I also have a small gift for you too. Chi. Yi Xian casually threw out a handful of fallen soul sand towards the black and white sovereigns like meteors that filled the sky and howled like ghosts. Yi Xian had refined 3,000 grains of fallen soul sand. This item was extremely vicious and specialized in harming the soul. Coupled with his cultivation, even taboo figures would be wary of him. You dare? Yi Xian's sudden attack immediately infuriated the black and white sovereigns. The two of them wanted to retaliate, but with the restriction still in place, they could only passively defend against Yi Xian's fallen soul sand. Chi. Over 100 grains of fallen soul sand hit the black and white sovereigns, causing them to emit terrifying black smoke. Rays of death light burst out from their bodies as their flesh and blood fell off their bodies. Furious roars came from their mouths. The fallen soul sand was extremely vicious. It was refined by Yi Xian for this trip to the ancient forbidden land. It was one of his trump cards. However, the black and white sovereigns were indeed powerful. Even if they were hit by the fallen soul sand, they only suffered light injuries. It was not enough to take their lives. They are really hard to kill. Yi Xian muttered sinisterly. He wanted to eliminate the two of them, but the entrance to the ancient divine mountain was gradually shrinking. If he lost the opportunity to enter the ancient divine mountain because of killing the two of them, it would not be worth it. Yi Xian instantly weighed the pros and cons. Then he plunged into the whirlpool. As the ancient divine light flickered, Yi Xian also disappeared into the whirlpool. Yi Xian, you brat, I want you to die a horrible death. Boom! Shocking waves surged and the pool burst open. As Yi Xian entered the ancient door, the restriction in the pool was also broken. The black and white sovereigns broke out of the water and frantically attacked the spot where Yi Xian had disappeared. However, there was no trace of Yi Xian. Damn it! The black sovereign king roared furiously. His body was badly mutilated and large chunks of flesh and blood were falling off. Only a pair of scarlet eyes were still spinning around. The black and white sovereigns would not have been so angry if Yi Xian had only taken away an ancient flower. However, the two of them could not accept the fact that they had lost the opportunity to enter the ancient God Mountain. In this ancient forbidden land, the greatest opportunity lay within the ancient divine mountain. In order to enter the ancient divine mountain, one had to find the entrance. The opportunity to enter the primordial divine mountain was fleeting, but Yi Xian was the first to arrive. How could this not make the two of them furious? What do we do now? White Sovereign King asked. What else can we do? Hurry up and find the next entrance. No matter what method we use, we have to enter the ancient God Mountain as soon as possible. The Black Sovereign King said coldly. Boom! The black and white sovereigns soared into the sky and quickly disappeared from the valley. According to their experience, there was only one entrance to the primordial divine mountain. This entrance had been sealed off by Yi Xian. Even if they destroyed the entire pool, they would not be able to enter the ancient God Mountain. Wang! The world spun as the universe was turned upside down. Yi Xian felt as though he had lost his direction. His mind was in a dazed state until a blinding brilliance caused him to squint his eyes. Only then was his dazed state completely dispelled. This is... When Yi Xian saw the scene before him clearly, his expression froze as he sucked in a cold breath. A mountain that Yi Xian had never seen before. Spanning across the heavens and earth, it was vast and boundless. A boundless ancient God Mountain was floating in the sky. The entire ancient God Mountain was glowing. This was the ancient God light, and there was an inexplicable great Tao law that was faintly emitted from the ancient God Mountain. It even caused Yi Xian's mind to tremble violently. A white jade staircase lay beneath Yi Xian's feet. This white jade staircase led straight to the ancient God Mountain. When Yi Xian looked at it, he could tell that this white jade staircase spanned hundreds of millions of miles. Rumble! Divine monument descending from the heavens, intimidating all eternity. A black stone monument appeared and took root beside the white jade staircase. On the black stone monument, there were 4 large words, eternal suppression of the ancient times. Dang dang dang. When Yi Xian saw the 4 large words on the stone monument, he immediately felt an extremely terrifying battle intent coming from the stone monument. It forced him to retreat continuously, completely frightened by the aura released by the stone monument. Eternal suppression of the ancient times? Yi Xian muttered in shock. His heart was in turmoil. Just the meaning of these 4 words made Yi Xian feel an indescribable feeling in his heart. Phew! Yi Xian slowly exhaled a turbid breath. He quickly calmed himself down. When he looked at the stone monument again, he could no longer feel that boundless battle intent. If something left behind from the ancient times is so terrifying, then what would the even more distant primordial and desolate ancient times be like? Yi Xian muttered softly, "When juniors of the future enter my ancient god mountain, they must climb the 999,999 steps before they are qualified to enter my ancient god mountain." Just as Yi Xian was deep in thought, a dignified and heavy voice came from the vast world. This voice was ancient and hoarse. It was impossible to determine if it was produced by a living creature. Rumble! The Tongtian white jade staircase lit up. Ancient divine light rose from every white jade staircase, transforming into millions of divine lights that soared into the sky. There was also the sound of a great bell coming from the Tongtian staircase. Go! Yi Xian's gaze was fixed. He did not know how many people he would be entering the ancient god mountain, but he had to be faster than many people. At this moment, he had to be one step ahead to gain the upper hand. Boom! Yi Xian took a step forward and directly stepped onto the first white jade staircase. He immediately frowned because a pressure was acting on his body. Although the pressure was not great, it was definitely there. This also made Yi Xian secretly speculate that with every step he took, he would have to endure even greater pressure until he reached the top of the ancient god mountain. Yi Xian did not have time to think about it, because there was no way he could turn back. He could only follow the Tongtian staircase all the way to the ancient god mountain. Thump, thump, thump. Yi Xian was ascending. With every step he took, the white jade staircase beneath his feet emitted a rumbling sound. He had also embarked on a journey to the top of the mountain. Indeed, Yi Xian's speculation was true. This path to the ancient god mountain was indeed extremely difficult. As he continued climbing, the pressure on his body also increased. But fortunately, with Yi Xian's current cultivation, this pressure was nothing. It was not enough to hinder him. This also allowed him to climb at an extremely fast speed. Finally, Yi Xian was already halfway through the journey. Beads of sweat faintly appeared on his forehead. This half of the journey had taken him 100 years. Clearly, the pressure he was enduring was not small. Oh, all of a sudden, when Yi Xian raised his head to look ahead, he saw 2 figures that were rapidly climbing. It's them? Yi Xian's expression changed slightly, but he immediately calmed down. Yi Xian thought that his speed of entering the ancient god mountain was already very fast, but he did not expect that someone would be one step ahead of him. Chaotic Divine Master, Ancient Shadow. These 2 great taboos were almost one after the other. They were rapidly climbing up the ancient god mountain. Obviously, the 2 of them had found the entrance at almost the same time, and were completely in the lead. These 2 old monsters are really powerful. Yi Xian glanced at the 2 sinisterly, and once again set off to chase after them. Chapter 1792. He's here too. When Yi Xian discovered the 2 taboos, the 2 taboos also noticed Yi Xian. They were even more surprised that Yi Xian could find the entrance to the primordial divine mountain so quickly. Boom, boom. It must be known that on this mountain path, with every step, one would have to endure greater pressure than before, which made it extremely difficult to walk. This pressure came from the ancient times. It was an aura that had been accumulated for an entire era. It acted on everyone who climbed the mountain. The 2 taboos found it difficult to move forward. They did not dare to move too quickly, because their bodies would not be able to withstand the pressure if they increased their speed. The physical body of a taboos was just a dead body. Their physical strength would forever remain the same as before their death. Even if they became a taboos, they would still be dead. They could increase their cultivation, but their physical body would not be strengthened in the slightest. Therefore, they had to endure great pressure as they walked on the mountain path. They could only move forward steadily, not daring to make any mistakes. On the other hand, Yi Xian was different. He was a living person, and his body and soul were compatible. His body had been tempered thousands of times, and was constantly growing. Naturally, he was able to withstand the pressure that had been exerted on him since the ancient times. Most importantly, the mysterious rune formed by the ancient war soul had a protective effect on Yi Xian. It helped him a lot, and even helped him resist some of the pressure from the ancient times. Boom! Just as the two taboos were astonished, the boom behind them grew louder. Yi Xian had gradually caught up to them. They stopped with gloomy expressions. Yi Xian, I've really underestimated you. Wang Yingying narrowed his scarlet eyes and sized up Yi Xian. There was a faint trace of fear in his eyes. Actually, I've always had a question. For an old freak like you who has experienced so many chaos verses and lived for so long, when will you die? Yi Xian strolled in front of the ancient figure and indifferently glanced at him. Die? Wang Guiyin's shadow sneered. You won't live to see the day I die. Why don't you think about how you're going to survive in the ancient danger lands? Alright, let's wait and see. Let's see if it's you who dies or me. Boom. Yi Xian took a step forward, directly surpassing the eternal shadow, and even flashed past the primal chaos divine sovereign. However, before Yi Xian could take a few steps, two extremely terrifying auras came from behind him. If you want to enter the primordial divine mountain, you can stay here. The two great taboos were filled with murderous intent. How could they allow Yi Xian to enter the primordial divine mountain first? Naturally, they had to deal with Yi Xian ruthlessly. Rumble. The two great arts shook the heavens and earth, turning into unparalleled rays of death that shot toward Yi Xian. The world around them rumbled and trembled. Can you kill me? Yi Xian suddenly turned around and opened the 12 gates of heaven with a bang. Buried reincarnation blasted the heavens and earth apart as two eternal reincarnation fists smashed toward the two great taboos. Bang! The void exploded, and the ancient path trembled. Yi Xian's attack contained 100% of his strength and collided with the two great taboos. Although Yi Xian's cultivation wasn't as strong as the taboos, he still dared to go toe-to-toe with them. Moreover, his cultivation in the ancient danger lands had almost reached the peak of the 12 gates of heaven. Although his cultivation hadn't undergone a qualitative transformation, it was still stronger than before. Previously, when he fought with the heartless man, he couldn't do anything to him. Now that the two great taboos were attacking at the same time, although they posed a great threat to him, it was impossible for them to kill him. You two old farts, I gave you some face, but you really went ahead and tried to dye it. Do you really think that I, Yi Xian, am afraid of you old dogs? Yi Xian shouted coldly. He wasn't a doe that could be kneaded by anyone. If they wanted his life, he naturally wouldn't hold back, not even if they were taboo characters. Rumble. Eternal reincarnation, eternal dream. Yi Xian directly activated the eternal dream. His aura suddenly changed, and his body was filled with terrifying death rays, as if he had turned into a taboo character. The eternal dream was a shocking technique, and the embodiment of Yi Xian's strongest battle strength. It was also the reason why he could challenge the taboo characters. Once the eternal dream was activated, it displayed a shocking power, causing Yi Xian's battle strength to soar. Various laws and death chi surrounded him, and the two great taboos looked at each other in shock. Let's see how capable you two old dogs are. Do you really think that I, Yi Xian, am afraid of you? Rumble. Eternal reincarnation, burying heaven and destroying earth, eternal dream, eternal reincarnation. The ancient reincarnation fist blasted out in a terrifying manner. The great dream of eternity deduced all the methods of the primordial chaos. All the methods and Daos that Yi Xian had seen before were activated by the great dream of eternity, and they displayed astonishing and terrifying might. Chi. The death rays were chaotic, and the myriad of techniques covered the sky. Countless great taboo techniques were casually thrown out by Yi Xian. The eternal reincarnation fist blasted out crazily, and the two great taboos immediately retaliated. Bang bang bang. The death rays appeared, and the void collapsed. Even the surrounding vital energy hummed terrifyingly. The dazzling death rays blotted out the sky, and were accompanied by terrifying rumbling sounds, as if they were going to penetrate this land. Fortunately, this was an ancient land of death, and there were ancient experts here. The power unleashed by the three couldn't hurt this place at all. If it was the outside world, millions of miles of heaven and earth would have collapsed. Boom! The eternal dream was like the heavens, and the body was like the universe. Yi Xian turned back, and his entire body was filled with death light. He formed a forbidden technique in his hand, and it was actually the specialty of the eternal shadow, the 8 forbidden techniques, that crazily blasted towards the 2 great taboos. What kind of technique is this brat cultivating? Facing his own 8 taboo techniques, the eternal shadow was speechless and shocked. He couldn't understand how Yi Xian had learned his 8 taboo techniques. Boom! The kill technique suppressed all things, the chaos technique disturbed the laws of the void, and the illusion technique turned the universe upside down. Yi Xian pressed forward, and accompanied by his own techniques and Daos, his fists and legs turned into boundless waterfalls, carrying with them an ancient ferocious might as he clashed with the 2 great taboos. Bang bang bang. It had to be said that Yi Xian was crazy at this moment, and every attack made the 2 great taboos' expressions change. They didn't expect Yi Xian's methods to be so fierce. However, these 2 old monsters weren't for nothing. They had lived for countless years, and their cultivation was above Yi Xian's. Naturally, they wouldn't be afraid of Yi Xian's fierce attacks. Rumble. The battle continued. Yi Xian was fighting 1 against 2, and all kinds of shocking techniques were used. The 2 great taboos retaliated fiercely, and all kinds of terrifying forbidden techniques came crashing down on Yi Xian. It had to be said that these 2 old men were indeed powerful, especially the silent primal chaos divine venerable. His methods were even more terrifying than the eternal shadows. Chapter 1793. Boom! The primal chaos divine sovereign's attack forced Yi Xian to passively defend himself. The terrifying death ray came crashing down. Yi Xian threw out a terrifying punch, but he was still sent flying by the death ray. This was the difference in cultivation. There was no way he could pull any tricks. Go to hell! Yi Xian used the force to retreat, and threw a handful of soul-fall sand at the 2 taboo lords. He then continued to climb the ancient divine mountain without looking back. Whoosh whoosh! The 2 old men were extremely vigilant against the soul-fall sand. They quickly raised a forbidden death ray to block the soul-fall sand. What a pity! Although these 2 old fellows were on guard, they underestimated Yi Xian's sinister methods. This soul death sand was specially refined by Yi Xian to deal with taboo characters. It could be said to be extremely vicious. So how could he let the 2 of them receive it so easily? The soul fall sand instantly disintegrated the forbidden death ray, and attacked the 2 old men. A terrifying thing happened. Large chunks of flesh fell from the 2 taboo lords. One could even see the white bones in the flesh. The 2 taboo lords groaned in pain. Suppress! The 2 taboo lords formed hand seals, and the forbidden death ray in their bodies erupted. They instantly expelled the soul fall sand from their bodies. However, half of their bodies were badly mutilated. They had suffered serious injuries. However, this level of injury was nothing to these 2 old freaks. Their faces were cold as they circulated their magic arts. In just a few breaths of time, their bodies were healed. However, when they looked for Yi Xian again, they could only see Yi Xian's faint figure in front of them. This brat is sinister and despicable. He has all kinds of sinister methods. We can't let him enter the ancient divine mountain first, Wang Guing growled. What's the use of saying so much nonsense? If you really wanted to kill him just now, how could he have left so easily? The primal chaos divine sovereign mocked. Wang Guing snorted. You didn't use your true strength either. You were also afraid that he was the reincarnation of a taboo lord, and would taint yourself with great karma. Otherwise, why didn't you kill him just now? The 2 mocked each other, and then fell silent at the same time. Obviously, these 2 old fellows were extremely wary of Yi Xian. Unless it was absolutely necessary, they didn't want to kill Yi Xian. These 2 old fellows were different from the other taboos. The two of them had lived for much longer than the other taboos, and knew some secrets that the other taboos didn't. This also caused their attitudes towards Yi Xian to be inexplicably complicated. They didn't dare to kill him, but if they didn't, Yi Xian would continue to grow. Sooner or later, he would become an obstacle to them. Moreover, these taboo characters all had their own ulterior motives. None of them wanted to take the risk of being tainted by this great karma. They all wanted to use other taboos to achieve their own goals. Chase. The two taboos glanced at each other and saw the solemn look in each other's eyes. However, they had a tacit understanding. Although they both wanted to use each other to kill Yi Xian, neither of them was a fool. They wouldn't risk being tainted by this terrifying great karma. After all, Yi Xian had always been able to survive desperate situations. If someone really did touch Yi Xian, wouldn't that provoke the greatest terror of all time? No one could be sure of such a thing. Naturally, they didn't dare to recklessly try it, especially these two old fellows who had lived for countless years. Boom! The two taboos set out again. This time they sped up. Even though they didn't dare to kill Yi Xian with their own hands, they definitely didn't want to let Yi Xian enter the ancient divine mountain first. Dong dong dong. Yi Xian sprinted all the way. He had already covered more than half of the journey. He could already vaguely see the outline of the ancient divine mountain. Although he was carrying an even greater ancient pressure, it didn't stop him from feeling excited. This was because he was ahead of everyone else. This also meant that he had the absolute advantage. He would definitely reap unimaginable rewards from this trip to the ancient forbidden land. All of a sudden, the excitement on Yi Xian's face suddenly froze. The next moment his brows furrowed together. His eyes were terrifyingly gloomy and bewildered. Yi Xian saw a person who was actually walking in front of him. Moreover, this person had already ascended the ancient divine mountain, much earlier than him and the two taboos. Yi Xian couldn't be more familiar with this person. It was the Undying Heaven Lord. When he saw the Undying Heaven Lord who had ascended the ancient divine mountain, Yi Xian's eyes were filled with bewilderment. If it were any other taboos, he wouldn't be so shocked. However, this person just had to be the Undying Heaven Lord. One must know that the two old men were able to find the entrance so early because they had been to the ancient forbidden land more than once. They already had a lot of experience with the ancient forbidden land. However, the Undying Heaven Lord was from the same era as him. He had just become a taboos. How could he be the first to find the entrance to the ancient divine mountain? Yi Xian's thoughts raced. His aura was terrifyingly gloomy. He could sense that there was a mastermind behind the Undying Heaven Lord. The Undying Heaven Lord was just a puppet. The Undying Heaven Lord isn't a problem. The real problem is the person behind him. If I want to know who that person is, it seems like the breakthrough lies with the Undying Heaven Lord. Yi Xian muttered. He already had a plan in his mind. Yi Xian increased his speed and rushed towards the end of the mountain path. Fortunately, he had the mysterious symbol formed by the ancient fighting soul on him. It helped him to reduce the ancient aura in the last part of the journey. It didn't affect his speed at all. On the other side, many taboos had found the entrance. At this moment, they were all climbing up the white jade stairs rapidly. However, everyone's aura was terrifyingly gloomy. A violent mood was brewing in them. Entering the ancient divine mountain depended on luck. It wasn't something that could be found easily. When one person found the entrance to the ancient divine mountain, the surrounding taboos sensed it and rushed over to fight for it. This also led to an extremely terrifying battle. In order to enter the ancient divine mountain, many taboos fought each other. It could be said that the battle was earth-shattering. Fortunately, this was the ancient forbidden land. These taboos couldn't cause any damage to the ancient forbidden land. Finally, these taboos found the entrance one after another. At this moment, they were all rapidly climbing up the ancient divine mountain. They were all afraid that they would fall behind others and lose this heaven-defying opportunity. The black and white sovereigns' faces were terrifyingly gloomy. Both of them had their opportunities snatched by Yi Xian. They wanted to learn from Yi Xian and snatch others' opportunities. This also led to an extremely terrifying battle. The black and white sovereigns encountered the death god. Although the death god was only one person, his cultivation was extremely terrifying. He even forced the black and white sovereigns to retreat repeatedly. If not for the entrance opening, and the death god not having the time to deal with the two of them, the death god would have torn the two of them apart. The human Dao master was lucky. He met the myriad beast's ancestor. The two of them found an entrance together, and easily entered this place. Although the chess ancestor was alone, he was the founder of the chaotic star masters. His array formations were top-notch. He also managed to find the entrance without any mishap. At this moment, everyone was rushing forward rapidly. However, all of them were filled with hostility. A huge battle could erupt on this mountain path at any time. Chapter 1794. Ancient Sacred Mountain. Halfway up the mountain. Hoo. The undying Heaven Lord was panting heavily. The death aura around his body was slightly chaotic, and his aura was somewhat weak. However, he was excitedly sizing up the primordial divine mountain before him. He was the first to arrive at the primordial divine mountain, and it was all thanks to the map that Prison had given him. Not only did the map indicate how to enter the primordial divine mountain, it even recorded what restrictions and dangers existed in every single primordial divine palace. And it even indicated the great fortuitous encounters and legacies of the primordial divine palace. With this map, the undying Heaven Lord would have the help of the gods. It could be said that he had a deep understanding of the ancient sacred mountain. This would also allow him to achieve twice the result with half the effort. Yi Xian, it's true that I can't kill you, but you won't have a good ending either. Once I find the flower of 3 lifetimes, and become a living person again, I'll be able to sit on the same level as Prison. At that time, I'll definitely tear you to pieces and grind your bones to dust. The undying Heaven Lord muttered sinisterly, his eyes flashing with a sinister light. He wished for nothing more than to eat Yi Xian's flesh and drink Yi Xian's blood. However, he had to complete the mission that Prison had given him. Otherwise, his end would definitely be extremely miserable. He didn't dare go against Prison's will at all. Boom! Suddenly, the sound of something breaking through the air came from behind undying Heaven Lord, startling him. He didn't expect someone to catch up to him so quickly. Undying Heaven Lord turned around to look at the newcomer. It's you! When the undying Heaven Lord saw the person behind him, his expression turned sinister. He didn't expect the person chasing after him to be Yi Xian. This fellow was indeed not simple. It was no wonder that even Prison valued him so much. Inwardly, the Heavenly Lord of Undying was shocked. However, he had already calmed down. He looked at Yi Xian with a calm expression. He had no intentions of attacking Yi Xian. The calmer the Undying Heaven Lord was, the more Yi Xian knew that there was a big problem with him. This also caused his eyes to twitch slightly. A cordial smile appeared on his face as he walked towards Undying. Fellow Taoist Undying, we can actually have a good talk. There's really no need to kill him. Yi Xian's face was filled with kindness as he slowly walked to Undying's side. It was as if he and Undying Heaven Lord had been friends for many years. The Undying Heaven Lord was startled. Perhaps others might not understand Yi Xian, but to him, he knew exactly what kind of person Yi Xian was. At this moment, Yi Xian appeared to be harmless to humans and animals. This also meant that he was brewing a huge conspiracy, and was definitely plotting against him. Yi Xian, don't play this game with me. Do you think there's still room for reconciliation between us? Undying Heaven Lord said coldly. You jest, fellow Taoist Undying. Truth be told, the grudge between us is all in the past. You killed me once, and I killed you once. We're even. Besides, now that you've turned into a taboo, your cultivation base is even higher than mine. We can put aside the grudge between us, Yi Xian said with a smile. Put it down. The Undying Heaven Lord sneered. How? Don't you think your words are very hypocritical? I still remember you telling me that we're actually the same type of people, and can be friends. Now, I sincerely want to be friends with you. Can't the past be resolved? Yi Xian said sincerely. The friendlier Yi Xian appeared, the more cautious the Undying Heaven Lord became. He had suffered too much at the hands of Yi Xian. He didn't trust Yi Xian at all. Yi Xian didn't mind the Undying Heaven Lord's silence. He had already expected this result. After all, the grudge between them couldn't be resolved. Yi Xian's eyes flashed. He pretended to sigh emotionally. Actually, I feel bad for fellow Taoist. You used to be a supreme expert throughout the ages, respected by all living beings in the chaos. But now, you're a taboo being controlled by others. Are you really willing to accept this? What a joke. If I'm not dead, how can I be controlled by others? I'm just, the undying Heaven Lord retorted. But halfway through his words he instantly woke up. Only then did he realize that Yi Xian was trying to trick him. Seeing the undying Heaven Lord's expression, Yi Xian's eyes flashed. He knew he guessed right. The undying Heaven Lord was indeed being controlled by others. Thump, 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 Yi Xian paced back and forth in front of the undying Heaven Lord. Then he stopped and looked at the undying Heaven Lord with an unusually solemn expression. Fellow Taoist talent isn't below me, Yi Xian. Why do you have to be someone's dog? If you're willing, we can be friends. In this trip to the ancient forbidden ground, we'll be invincible if we work together. The fortune in the ancient God Mountain will also belong to us. The undying Heaven Lord naturally didn't believe Yi Xian's words. However, he was slightly moved. After all, he had to stop Yi Xian from obtaining that item. This was also a mission given to him by prison. The undying Heaven Lord definitely wouldn't dare to betray prison unless he could turn back into a living person. Otherwise, if he really did betray prison, his end would be extremely miserable. During his time in the death prison, no one knew better than him how terrifying prison was. The other party was an existence that had surpassed the taboo realm. His methods were simply unimaginable. Yi Xian, you don't have to trick me anymore. I don't have anyone behind me. Moreover, no one can make me his dog. However, we can indeed be friends. Let's display our strength in the ancient God Mountain and take what we need. The undying Heaven Lord finally calmed down. Since Yi Xian was trying to get on his good side, he would go with the flow and agree to Yi Xian's request. He could also complete the mission given to him by prison. Dao friend is indeed straightforward. Then it's settled. Yi Xian smiled and patted the undying Heaven Lord's shoulder affectionately. It was as though the two of them had been friends for many years. Of course, both of them knew that the other had ulterior motives. It was just that neither of them revealed it. Yi Xian wanted to find the person behind the undying Heaven Lord. The undying Heaven Lord wanted to complete the mission given to him by prison. It all depended on who was better. Apart from the person behind the undying Heaven Lord, Yi Xian wanted to know why the undying Heaven Lord was the first to enter the ancient God Mountain. Did he have a treasure that he didn't know about? Rumble. Just as the two of them were thinking about their own ulterior motives, the entire ancient God Mountain rumbled and shook. What happened next left the two of them dumbstruck. What did they see? Ancient God palaces rose from the ground one after another. The eye-piercing ancient God light wreaked havoc between the heaven and earth. An ancient and heavy aura of desolation enveloped the world. The ancient God palaces have appeared. The undying Heaven Lord roared in excitement. His scarlet eyes flickered intensely. His fists were unconsciously clenched, proving just how excited he was. 81 ancient God palaces appeared in the shape of a pyramid. At the peak of the ancient God Mountain stood a black palace. It seemed that the most important opportunity was at the peak of the ancient God Mountain. Yi Xian looked up at the black palace at the peak of the mountain. He could faintly feel an unusual aura, as though it was summoning him. Chapter 1795. Boom! Yi Xian's feet exploded with power as he was about to soar into the sky and head towards the Black Palace. However, he fell back to the ground in the next moment, unable to even fly. Don't waste your energy. It's impossible to fly in the ancient divine mountain. If you want to reach the peak, you have to pass through all the ancient divine palaces before you can reach the peak. The undying Heaven Lord reminded him coldly. How do you know so many secrets? Yi Xian asked casually. Naturally, it's prison. The undying Heaven Lord was instantly jolted awake. He almost spat out the secret regarding prison. Fortunately, he came to his senses in time and did not continue. Prison? Although the undying Heaven Lord only spoke halfway, Yi Xian's expression changed as his heart trembled. It was all because of the word prison. However, Yi Xian calmed down in the next moment. However, a heavy look flashed across his eyes, as a pair of eyes unconsciously flashed across his mind. It was a pair of eyes of death. He had only seen it once in the death cage. It was enough to make Yi Xian unable to forget it for the rest of his life. Could it be him? Yi Xian was bewildered. The first person he thought of was the owner of those eyes. If the person behind the undying Heaven Lord was him, then everything made sense. Before Yi Xian could regain his senses, a loud rumble came from the white jade stairs behind him. The primal chaos divine sovereign and eternal shadow arrived in an instant. Following that, the taboo characters arrived one after another. Although there were some in front and some at the back, there was not much difference in time. Yi Xian. Rumble. The black and white sovereigns had just arrived halfway up the mountain when they saw Yi Xian's existence. Both of them looked ferocious as they charged towards Yi Xian in an instant. Eternal Reincarnation Fist. Human Dao Great Art. Undying Heaven Blade. At the same time, Yi Xian made his move. The human Dao sovereign instantly stood beside Yi Xian. What was most surprising was that the undying Heaven Lord had also made a move to help. Rumble. The three of them unleashed a terrifying attack at the same time, immediately nullifying the black and white sovereign's attacks and sending them flying. This scene caused the expressions of the other taboos to change. It was one thing for the human Dao overlord to help Yi Xian, but the undying Heaven Lord had a deep grudge with Yi Xian. Why was he helping Yi Xian now? You? The black and white sovereigns returned. The two of them glared viciously at Yi Xian, and the other too, but they did not attack again. Harmony is precious, harmony is precious. The good-natured chess ancestor came out to mediate once again. However, his eyes flickered. Clearly, he couldn't understand the situation in front of him. Rumble. Just as the atmosphere was tense, the door to the first ancient divine palace opened with a rumble. Everyone did not have time to stare at each other, as they all looked towards the first ancient divine palace. Let's go. Yi Xian ignored many taboos and charged into the first divine palace with a single step. The most important thing was to seize the initiative. Chi. The other taboos did not waste any time as they entered the first ancient divine palace. As the door closed, everyone disappeared from the outside world. Has it begun? Wang. Ripples appeared in the void. Yi silently appeared. His figure was extremely blurry, making it impossible for others to sense his existence. He indifferently looked at the entire primordial divine mountain. Chi. The next moment, Prison took a step forward and stepped into the sky. He instantly ascended the peak of the ancient divine mountain and headed straight for the 81st ancient divine palace. Clearly, Prison was not restricted by the ancient forbidden lands, and nothing could restrict him. However, he stood in front of the 81st ancient divine palace for a long time without pushing open the door. Instead, his breathing was slightly chaotic as he pondered over something. You wish to awaken the memories of your past life. I will never allow it. Boom. Prison said coldly. He raised his illusory palm and pushed towards the door of the 81st ancient divine palace. How terrifying was Prison's cultivation. He was one of the few people who could shock the heavens and the forbidden lands. He was the taboo of the legendary taboos. If he wanted to push open the dusty door, it was naturally easy for him to do so. The heavens could not bury him, and the earth could not destroy him. He had traversed the chaos verse and broken through the eternal cycle of reincarnation. Even the chaos verse samsara of annihilation could not kill him. Even the will of the chaos verse could not do anything to him. A mere dusty door naturally could not stop him. Rumble. The door of the 81st ancient divine palace rumbled and trembled. Prison pushed open the door slightly, but it was also at this moment that something extremely terrifying happened. Eternal suppression of the primordial era. The sound of eternal thunder, and the universe's profound yellow. A black steel suddenly appeared. It was the steel that Yi Xian had just seen. All laws extinguish eternal suppression. For large words traversed the primordial era to arrive. The 4 words on the steel released an unparalleled might that suppressed Prison. World-suppressing heavenly steel? Prison shouted in a cold voice as he clawed at the black stone steel. However, in the next moment, the 4 words on the stone steel emanated boundless divine light, and an extremely terrifying aura of desolation erupted from them. Sizzle. The steel had a spirit, and it suppressed the primordial era forever. This was an eternal spiritual item that was nurtured by that person's laws and Tao. Even if that person was no longer around, the world-suppressing heavenly steel that he left behind was absolutely terrifying to the extreme. Bang! Eternal suppression of the primordial era. The 4 large words smashed down on Prison's body and forced him to retreat continuously. The palace door that had just been opened suddenly closed. Rumble. Bang! The world-suppressing heavenly steel fell and took root in front of the door of the 81st Ancient Divine Palace. The 4 large words on the steel released a mysterious aura that made people not dare to take half a step forward. Desolate. In the next moment, Prison stared at the world-suppressing heavenly steel and roared. The terrifying aura caused the entire ancient forbidden land to rumble, as if it would collapse at any moment. Crack! Yu clenched his fists tightly, and his joints emitted a terrifying loud noise. The surrounding ancient space was crushed by his grip. His gaze was fixed on the World Suppression Heaven monument, and an extremely unresigned look flashed across his eyes. The means you left behind are indeed powerful, but don't be too proud. If you can't take back what belongs to you, you will never wake up. That's what I said. Boom! Prison growled savagely. He vanished with a bang, as if he had never appeared. Only the black stone tablet that had taken root in front of the gate of the 81st Ancient Divine Palace seemed to be protecting something very important. World-suppressing heavenly steel. Eternal suppression of the primordial era. The divine item had a spirit, and it had been protecting for countless years. It had been waiting for that person to return. Even if there was a shocking person who came here, he or she could forget about taking a step forward. Crack! A crack appeared on the world-suppressing heavenly steel. Although the divine item had stopped Prison's footsteps, he was after all one of the few shocking people. Therefore the divine item was still damaged. However, the divine item had a spirit. Unless the world-suppressing heavenly steel was destroyed, no one could take half a step into the heavenly palace. Chapter 1796. The First Divine Palace. Boom! Yi Xian and the others had just entered when the ancient pressure swept over them, forcing them to retreat. The terrifying aura was too terrifying, causing everyone to tremble in fear. The mysterious Heaven Pearl? Suddenly, a cry of surprise was heard, causing everyone to be startled as they looked towards the depths of the First Divine Palace. They saw a stone platform standing in the depths of the First Divine Palace. On the stone platform, there was a turbid ancient pearl that was emitting a halo of light, giving people a feeling of unparalleled beauty. However, that was not the most important thing. The most important thing was that the ancient pearl was faintly flowing with ancient divine light, and was filled with inexplicable laws. It was also nurturing an extremely large amount of energy. A supreme treasure. This was definitely an ancient supreme treasure. With just a glance, Yi Xian dared to conclude that the ancient pearl was definitely an ancient supreme treasure. Even his cultivation was throbbing. Rumble. Just as everyone's eyes were burning with passion, the ground trembled violently as stone statues rose from the ground. Terrifying auras were emitted from these stone statues. Ancient divine guards, everyone be careful. Chess Ancestor hurriedly reminded everyone. Clearly, if they wanted to obtain the mysterious Heaven Pearl and pass through the First Divine Palace, they had to defeat these ancient divine guards. Ancient divine treasures belong to those who are virtuous. Everyone, let's rely on our own abilities. Boom! The god of death shouted coldly as he took a step forward, releasing the forbidden power of death from his body. He had cultivated the great Tao of death when he was alive. Coupled with the forbidden power of death, he was like a tiger that had grown wings. Trespassers of the divine palace shall die. Roar! The world trembled as killing intent filled the sky. The stone statues slowly opened their eyes as fierce roars came from their mouths. Boom! These ancient divine guards were not living people, but puppets refined by ancient experts. They did not have any emotions of their own, and their only mission was to protect the first divine palace. Kill. Weapons filled the sky as the killing intent was cold. The 800 ancient divine guards struck with their weapons, and majestic ancient Yuan Qi burst out as they headed straight for the god of death. Mere puppets dare to be impudent in front of this god. The god of death was incomparably arrogant. How could he take these ancient puppets seriously? Boom. The Death Divine Claw was capable of annihilating all things. The Death Divine Lord's attack was earth-shattering. The terrifying Great Tao of Death combined with the forbidden power of death, intended to blast the primordial divine guards into pieces. Bang! In the next moment, something extremely strange happened. The Death God's terrifying attack was unable to cause any harm to the 800 ancient divine guards. Instead, the attacks of the ancient divine guards landed directly on the Death God's body. Boom! The god of death was sent flying. The ancient divine guard let out a thunderous roar as he strode toward the god of death with weapons in his hands. These primordial divine guards are indestructible. They were all created by ancient experts. Brute force is not allowed to pass through the first divine palace. The chess grandmaster bellowed calmly, and the black and white chessboard in his hand suddenly shot out. Beams of starlight shot out and gathered into a supreme formation, opening up a path for the chess grandmaster. Boom! It had to be said that the sly old fox, chess ancestor, was indeed capable. He had conjured the black and white chessboard to form a peerless array, but it had actually slowed down the footsteps of these ancient divine guards. Chi. The chess grandmaster took a step forward, and with a strange and mysterious footwork, he actually shuttled through the ancient divine guards and approached the ancient platform. The mysterious heaven pearl is mine. Boom! The primordial shadow bellowed as he took a step forward. The terrifying Tao of time was displayed, and his entire being seemed to have merged with the passage of time. He was no longer in this material realm, as he too headed towards the ancient platform. Primordial yin-yang form. The black and white sovereigns had their own methods as well. Their auras instantly fused together, forming a Taiji yin-yang diagram that also swept past the ancient divine guards. Damn it! The death god's face turned cold as he became extremely serious. He formed hand seals with both hands to condense his great Tao of death, and turned into a wisp of smoke as he chased after the great taboos. Mere primordial divine guards can't stop this deity. The primordial chaos god took a step forward, and his body turned illusory. The ancient divine guards chose to ignore him, as they too headed towards the ancient platform. Myriad Beasts Dharma Idol. Although the Myriad Beast's ancestor didn't seem to have any presence, his methods weren't inferior to those of the ancient divine guards. He actually transformed into a strange beast, and chanted a mysterious incantation, easily passing by the ancient divine guards. The Heartless Man was also very powerful. He also chanted an incantation, and easily followed the group's footsteps. Heavenly Calamity Change. Yi Xian directly activated the Heavenly Calamity Change, and his entire body turned into nothingness. He passed by the ancient divine guards in an instant without causing any ripples. As for the human Tao Master and the Undying God Lord, they also displayed their own methods and headed towards the interior of the divine palace. It had to be said that Yi Xian's group was able to enter this place because they were all extremely powerful Tongtian characters. They all had their own Tongtian methods, so the first obstacle wasn't too difficult for them. Boom! In just a few dozen breaths, the group had already arrived at the depths of the first divine palace. The platform that held the mysterious heaven pearl was only a few feet away from them. Fellow Taoists, I'm sorry, but the mysterious heaven pearl is mine. Boom! No one present would be modest in the face of an ancient divine object. Aeon Shadow sneered and directly grabbed at the mysterious heaven pearl. It's still too early for you. Boom! Suddenly, the primal chaos divine sovereign sent a palm strike at Aeon Shadow. His 5 fingers also reached for the mysterious heaven pearl. It was impossible for him to give up this ancient divine object to Aeon Shadow. You're courting death. Boom! Aeon Shadow shouted in the face of the primal chaos divine sovereign's attack. He directly used the 8 techniques of suppression and also blasted at the primal chaos divine sovereign. Bang! The two of them collided and immediately retreated. However, this also gave the other forbidden lands an excellent opportunity. Come, the chess ancestor sneered. The black and white chessboard suddenly appeared. Mysterious starlight swirled around it, and directly wrapped around the mysterious heaven pearl. Scram! The Lord of all beasts threw a punch, and sent the black and white chessboard flying. The terrifying death-light beast's claws went straight for the mysterious heaven pearl. Lord of all beasts, you dare to oppose me? The chess ancestor's face was cold. The life and death chi suddenly erupted, and attacked the Lord of all beasts, with unparalleled starlight. Bang! 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 No one knew what grudges the two of them had in the distant past. When they attacked each other, they were extremely vicious, and wanted nothing more than to kill each other. Instantly, an extremely terrifying killing intent erupted. At this moment, Yi Xian watched coldly from the sidelines, and did not immediately take the mysterious heaven pearl. It was not that he was not interested in this ancient divine object, but he knew that if he made a move, he would definitely attract the attention of others. Boom! The black and white sovereigns did not have such concerns. The two of them transformed into the primal chaos yin-yang taiji diagram, and directly swept towards this supreme treasure. Clearly, this ancient divine object was extremely tempting to them. Chapter 1797. What a pity! The human Tao Master was prepared for this. A forbidden death ray came crashing down, forcing the two of them to retreat from the stone platform. Yi Xian, I'll hold back the black and white sovereigns. You take the treasure quickly. Boom! After saying that, the human Tao Master charged towards the black and white sovereigns. Even though the human Tao Master had just turned into a taboo, her foundation was extremely deep. After all, the great Tao of karma was not to be underestimated. After turning into a taboo, she became even more terrifying. Little girl, you dare to go against us? The black and white sovereigns roared. Facing the human Tao Master's attack, they were about to explode. The other party was just a junior. How dare she stop them from taking the treasure? Unfortunately, the black and white sovereigns were met with the human Tao's terrifying killing intent. The death rays combined with the great Tao of karma overwhelmed the black and white sovereigns. One had to know that every taboo was extremely powerful in their lifetime. Even after turning into a taboo, they still retained the Tao and Tao they had comprehended. As the saying went, the 3,000 great Taos all led to the same destination. However, there were differences in strength between the 3,000 great Taos. The great Tao of karma, that the human Tao Master had comprehended, was an extremely terrifying great Tao. It was one of the strongest among the 3,000 great Taos. The black and white sovereigns had only comprehended the great Tao of yin and yang. In terms of level, it was inferior to the great Tao of karma. In an instant, the human Tao Master and the black and white sovereigns engaged in an intense battle. Yi Xian frowned as he looked at them. He realized that there was a huge gap in cultivation between himself and these taboo sovereigns. In terms of cultivation, it would be difficult for him to face any one of the taboo sovereigns, let alone kill them. Yi Xian, didn't you say you wanted to work with me? Now is the time to work together. Let's work together to take the mysterious heavenly pearl. As for how to split it, we can discuss it later. The undying heaven lord narrowed her eyes. Alright, that's what I had in mind. Yi Xian smiled and nodded. Attack! The undying heaven lord did not waste any time. Her 5 fingers grabbed at the mysterious heavenly pearl. Yi Xian also attacked at the same time. How dare you? Although the taboos were fighting each other, they had been paying attention to the mysterious heavenly pearl. Now that they saw the two of them joining forces with myriad treasures, they immediately shot out terrifying death rays toward the two of them. Undi, you block them. Yi Xian's eyes flickered as his silhouette flickered, directly hiding behind the undying heaven lord. Clearly, he wanted the undying heaven lord to block these forbidden attacks for him. Only then would he be able to obtain the treasure. You? Undying heaven lord's expression changed. He originally wanted to refuse, but in the next moment, he chose to stand in front of Yi Xian. After all, this was only the number 1 divine palace. If he fell out with Yi Xian now, it would be difficult to deal with the future. All of you scram. Rumble. The undying Heaven Lord unleashed an unparalleled death ray, slashing out a dozen undying saber chi to block the terrifying attacks for Yi Xian. At the same time, Yi Xian smiled excitedly and grasped the Dark Heaven Pearl in his hand. This shocked the Forbidden Realm experts and caused them to roar in anger. One had to know that the Dark Heaven Pearl was an ancient divine item. It contained an extremely vast amount of energy that could raise the cultivation of these Forbidden Realm experts. Now that this divine item was in Yi Xian's hands, how could they allow such a thing to happen? Kill. In the next moment, everyone stopped fighting and glared fiercely at Yi Xian. Boom. In an instant, many taboo characters erupted with shocking killing intent. Terrifying rays of death circled around Yi Xian and locked onto him with eternal killing intent. Qi. The human Dao Master quickly returned to Yi Xian's side. The undying Heaven Lord's expression was uncertain, as a strange look flashed across his eyes. Now that Yi Xian had obtained the Dark Heaven Pearl, he instantly became the target of everyone. A huge battle was unavoidable because these Forbidden Realm experts were all coveting the Dark Heaven Pearl. How could they let Yi Xian obtain it? Kid, hand over the Dark Heaven Pearl. Otherwise you'll die here today. The Black and White Sovereigns shouted coldly. Yi Xian, the Dark Heaven Pearl is useless to you. Leave it to me. The Eternal Shadow said coldly. Little friend, the Dark Heaven Pearl is of great use to me. If you're willing to give it to me, I can use other things to exchange for it. The Chess Ancestor said. Although the other Forbidden Realm experts did not say anything, they all stared at Yi Xian with burning eyes. Clearly, the Dark Heaven Pearl was of great use to them. Yi Xian smiled. However, his smile was very calm, and he was even more calm. Under everyone's malicious gazes, Yi Xian slowly placed the Dark Heaven Pearl in his palm. This immediately made the other Forbidden Realm experts' eyes burn even more fervently. In fact, these Forbidden Realm experts did not want the Dark Heaven Pearl because of the energy it contained. Although it could raise their cultivation, it was not by much. It was not enough to make them so excited. The real reason why these Forbidden Realm experts coveted the Dark Heaven Pearl was that it was an ancient divine item. There were ancient laws within it. If they could comprehend the ancient laws within it, it would be immensely beneficial to them. What were the ancient laws? The ancient laws were the foundation of the ancient expert's strength. Only by refining the ancient laws would one be able to display supreme power. Why was it said that the three great eras were the strongest eras in the eternal universe? This was because the three great eras were filled with the unique power of laws. These power of laws were the foundation of the three great eras' strength. Since the three great eras disappeared, these unique laws no longer existed in the primal chaos. This was also the reason why the Forbidden Realm experts wanted to seize the Dark Heaven Pearl. It was because it contained the unique ancient laws. Looking at everyone's greedy faces, Yi Xian smiled and said, "Since all of you want this ancient divine item, who should I give it to? Give me the Dark Heaven Pearl." Boom! The Primal Chaos Divine Sovereign took a step forward and released a terrifying forbidden power. Clearly, he wanted to suppress everyone and force Yi Xian to hand over the treasure. Primal Chaos Divine Sovereign, who do you think you are? Do you think I'm invisible? Boom! The Primal Chaos Divine Sovereign was not in his eyes at all. He took a step forward and stared straight at Yi Xian. Clearly, he was determined to get the Dark Heaven Pearl. The other Forbidden Realm experts also took a step forward. Clearly, they would not give up on this divine item. This made the situation even more tense. Actually, I don't want this divine item. It's just that you will all resent me if I give it to anyone. Why don't I have it? Yi Xian said with a fake smile. You dare? The Black and White Sovereigns shouted. I don't dare. I hate it when people threaten me. Yi Xian chuckled. What happened next stunned all the Forbidden Realm experts. Gulp. The Dark Heaven Pearl. An ancient divine item. Yi Xian directly threw it into his mouth. As his throat wriggled, he actually swallowed the divine object in one gulp. A terrifying ancient divine light suddenly erupted from his body. Yi Xian had swallowed and refined the Dark Heaven Pearl in front of all the Forbidden Realm experts. Even the Forbidden Realm experts could not react in time. Chapter 1798. Thump, thump, thump. The great Tao was like the heavens, and the ages trembled. Terrifying ancient divine light pulsed on Yi Xian's body, and a faint mysterious aura appeared on Yi Xian's body. Arg! Yi Xian was extremely pleased with himself at first, but he frowned in the next moment. His face instantly twisted, and he let out a painful roar. Idiot, you're dead meat. You're really stupid. Do you think the mysterious heavenly pearl is so easy to refine? The mysterious heavenly pearl is an ancient divine item, not to mention the vast amount of ancient vitality it contains. Even the remnant laws within will destroy your body and soul. The taboo realm experts instantly came to their senses and looked at Yi Xian with a sneer. Their eyes were filled with schadenfreude. Boom, boom, boom. Yi Xian's face was filled with extreme pain as his body expanded at a terrifying rate. He was like a rubber ball that was about to explode, causing people to be extremely shocked when they saw him. Yi Daoyu. The human Tao master's expression changed. She wanted to help Yi Xian, but she didn't know where to start. As for the undying Heaven Lord, his expression was sinister. He couldn't wait for Yi Xian to die immediately. However, based on his understanding of Yi Xian, he was afraid that Yi Xian wouldn't die just yet. As expected, rumble. The 12 heavenly gates rose behind Yi Xian, and terrifying reincarnation halos fell on Yi Xian's body. His swollen body quickly calmed down, and he emitted an extremely terrifying aura. Boom! The void exploded and divine light surged. Under the horrified gazes of all the taboo realm experts, Yi Xian's body returned to normal. He didn't explode from the mysterious heavenly pearl. I'm sorry, everyone. It seems that I won't die so easily. Yi Xian smiled coldly. The 12 heavenly gates. In the next moment, the taboo existence's expressions turned ugly. Fear and helplessness flashed across their eyes. Actually, they had always felt very helpless towards Yi Xian, because he was the only living person among them. Moreover, he had walked on the most correct path, relying on a living person to open the 12 heavenly gates. They all knew that the path Yi Xian walked was the path of cultivation of the strongest 3 great eras. After the 3 great eras, no one was able to open the 12 gates of heaven. If Yi Xian could break through the 12 immortal heavenly gates and enter the next realm, then it was very likely that he would become one of the few people who could shock the heavens and the earth. Of course, this was only their speculation. As for whether it was true or not, it was still unknown. After all, among the small group of people who had become a world-shaking danger zone, no one had ever entered this realm. This was only their speculation. Rumble. Just as everyone was lost in their own thoughts, the stone platform beside Yi Xian rumbled as it descended. A gloomy door rose up, instantly drawing everyone's attention. The entrance to the second palace. The chess ancestor muttered coldly. Without any nonsense, he instantly entered and completely disappeared. The other taboo existences also instantly entered the gloomy door. Clearly, the mysterious heaven pearl had been devoured and refined by Yi Xian. Even if they killed Yi Xian, it would be useless. They should quickly enter the second palace. Yi Xian's expression changed. He was about to rush to the next palace, but just as he took a step, he suddenly saw from the corner of his eye that Wuxia and the immortal Heaven Lord had not moved. This made him immediately stop in his tracks. He did not rush to the next palace like everyone else. Clearly, these two people were very familiar with the ancient divine mountain. The fact that they had not moved meant that there must be a secret that he did not know. Sure enough, before Yi Xian could ask, Wuxia had already answered him. Fellow Taoist, please calm down. The primordial divine mountain has a total of 81 divine palaces, and only the last divine palace is the most important. Legend has it that it contains a supreme treasure left behind from the primordial era. However, no one has ever entered the 81st palace. As Wuxia explained, a look of understanding flashed across Yi Xian's eyes. It turned out that among the 81 palaces, other than the first palace being the entrance, the other palaces were not fixed. To put it bluntly, the entire ancient divine mountain was a vast maze. Other than the first and last stages that were fixed, the other palaces were chaotic and unknown. For example, when the taboo existences rushed to the next palace, they did not know which palace they would appear in. In other words, after entering this door, everyone would be randomly teleported to different palaces. If they were lucky, they could enjoy a palace alone. If they were unlucky, they might be teleported to the same place in groups of 2, 3, or even more. Moreover, the most important problem was that the key to the 81st palace was hidden in one of the palaces. Only by finding this key could one enter the 81st palace. Therefore, these taboo existences rushed to the next palace, hoping to quickly find their own great opportunity. If they could find the key to the 81st palace, that would be the best. After hearing Wu Xian's explanation, Yi Xian finally understood why Wu Xian and Undying Heaven Lord were not in a hurry to rush to the second palace. Clearly, luck was extremely important in this ancient divine mountain. If one was lucky, they would naturally obtain many great ancient opportunities. They might even enter the 81st palace and obtain the legendary greatest inheritance of ancient times. Yi Xian was shocked and secretly sized up Undying Heaven Lord. However, he saw that Wu Xian's expression was calm, as if he did not care much about this matter. No, this old thief was as calm as Mount Tai, and did not seem to care about this matter. It seemed like he was very confident. How meticulous was Yi Xian's mind. He had been secretly observing Undying Heaven Lord, because he was sure that Wu Xian had a deep understanding of the ancient divine mountain. Clearly, Wu Xian had a trump card that he did not know about. Yi Xian, remember our promise. The heartless man took a deep look at Yi Xian, then entered the door as well. Yi Daoyu, since you will be randomly teleported to different ancient divine palaces, you must be very careful. Human Dao Master warned Yi Xian before quickly entering the portal. Yi Xian, if fate wills it, we will meet again. Undying Heaven Lord smiled faintly before instantly entering the portal and disappearing. At this moment, only Yi Xian was left in the first palace. He frowned as he sized up the first palace. Other than the 800 ancient divine guard puppets, there was nothing else in the palace. The number 1 divine palace is the entrance. Is it just an entrance? Yi Xian looked around the first divine palace, hoping to find some useful clues. He wasn't in a hurry to head to the next divine palace, because he faintly felt that the first divine palace shouldn't only have one mysterious heaven bead. Suddenly, a surprised voice sounded out from Yi Xian's mouth, as his gaze abruptly fell onto the 800 ancient divine guards. This was because Yi Xian discovered that although these ancient divine guards were only puppets, there was a faint ancient aura circulating around their bodies, giving off a faint feeling of palpitations. They didn't fall silent again, just because everyone had passed through the first divine palace. Chapter 1799. These taboo characters had rushed to the next palace, but had neglected the ancient divine guards in the first palace. Perhaps the real treasure in the first palace was the ancient divine guards? This whimsical idea appeared in Yi Xian's mind. The feeling grew stronger and stronger, and Yi Xian tried to approach the ancient divine guards. Kill! Roar! The ancient divine power shook the sky. When Yi Xian approached the ancient divine guards, he was met with attacks that covered the sky and earth. Chi chi chi. Dao weapons slashed toward Yi Xian, and Yi Xian hurriedly defended himself. The 12 heaven gates rotated behind him, and the eternal reincarnation fist was constantly activated by him. Bang! Yi Xian punched out, and actually shattered an ancient divine guard. A speck of divine light rippled out, and in the next moment, an extremely shocking thing happened. Buzz! The mysterious symbol on Yi Xian's forehead pulsated violently, and instantly swallowed the divine light. The sorrowful voice of the ancient fighting soul sounded in his ears. The fighting soul is immortal and will last forever. Rumble! A terrifying thing happened. When the voice of the ancient fighting soul rumbled in Yi Xian's ears, the ancient divine guards in front of him also let out sorrowful cries. Bang bang bang! The ancient divine guards exploded and rays of ancient divine light appeared. Then, they turned into countless light spots, and were swallowed by the mysterious symbol on Yi Xian's forehead. Dong dong dong. The mysterious symbol violently pulsed, as if the sound of the ancient great Tao was playing. It instantly caused Yi Xian to enter an indescribable state. Time passed slowly. After an unknown period of time, Yi Xian's body shook, and he suddenly came to his senses. His eyes flashed with a terrifying light. I see. Yi Xian suddenly growled, and the corners of his mouth curled up in excitement. He had learned a secret about the passage to the 81st Palace. It turned out that in order to enter the 81st Palace, one had to collect all the seals left behind by the ancient fighting souls. Only by collecting all the seals could one open the 81st Palace. In other words, there were 81 palaces in the primordial divine mountain. Each palace had a mark left behind by an ancient expert. These marks gathered together were the keys to open the 81st Palace. This was all thanks to the mysterious symbol formed by the ancient fighting soul. If Yi Xian had not been recognized by the ancient fighting soul on the ancient starry sky path, he would not have been able to discover this secret even if he had easily entered the ancient sacred mountain. It was as if there was a heavenly will in the unseen world. From the moment Yi Xian stepped onto the ancient path of the stars, until he entered the ancient divine mountain, there was an invisible force guiding him forward. While Yi Xian slowly exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. His eyes were as deep as an ancient pond. He could already faintly sense what was happening to him. This was no longer something that could be explained by luck. Yi Xian could feel that he was destined to be here. Moreover, at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly felt a sense of familiarity. It was as if he had been here before. This feeling was extremely strange, but it really existed in his heart, and he could not erase it. Let's go. Yi Xian suppressed this misconception. Since he'd already discovered the secret to opening the 81st Divine Palace, he had to collect the ancient imprints left behind in each Divine Palace, until he went to the 81st Ancient Divine Palace to open it. Yi Xian took a step forward and entered the door. It had to be said that Yi Xian was very lucky. When he arrived at the second Ancient Divine Palace, he did not discover any taboo characters. At this moment, he was in a sea of flowers. The heaven and earth were filled with extremely rich vital qi. There were also many ancient spiritual essences that he did not recognize. In the endless sea of flowers, there was a stalk of ancient spiritual grass that was emitting divine light. Just by looking at it, one could feel the cultivation in one's body begin to stir. It seems that every divine palace is a cultivation treasure land. This is the greatest opportunity for me, Yi Xian muttered to himself. Then he swept past the sea of flowers. With a flip of his hand, he collected many ancient spiritual essences, until he arrived in front of the stalk of ancient spiritual grass. Keep. Yi Xian rolled up his sleeves, and was about to keep the stalk of ancient spiritual grass. However, as he moved, the entire sea of flowers suddenly churned. The originally ordinary flowers and plants turned into the most terrifying ancient divine light, and shot towards him. Fortunately, Yi Xian was already prepared. He knew that every ancient divine palace was filled with danger. The 12 heavenly gates rose behind him. The mysterious symbol on his forehead pulsed, and the terrifying sea of flowers that had just churned suddenly calmed down. At the same time, Yi Xian also successfully kept the stalk of ancient spiritual grass in his bag. In the next moment, a door appeared again. It was obviously the entrance to the next divine palace. However, Yi Xian did not enter. Instead, he was sizing up the sea of flowers. According to the experience of the first divine palace, Yi Xian already knew that every divine palace had an ancient imprint. Only by gathering all the ancient imprints could one open the 81st divine palace. Boom! Yi Xian's 5 fingers abruptly stretched out as he activated the mysterious symbol on his forehead. An obscure aura rippled out, and the entire sea of flowers suddenly distorted. Then, it actually started to wither, and an ancient imprint appeared and charged straight towards Yi Xian. Keep! The mysterious symbol released its ancient divine might, and directly swallowed the ancient imprint. The divine palace also became dim and lightless. As expected, Yi Xian muttered excitedly. He knew that his deduction was not wrong. Since he knew that his method was feasible, Yi Xian was not in a hurry to go to the next divine palace. Instead, he examined his own cultivation. All strength was built on oneself. The most important thing was to increase one's cultivation as quickly as possible. Yi Xian sat cross-legged. Two ancient spiritual items appeared. Other than the ancient spiritual grass that he had just plucked, there was also an ancient spiritual flower that he had obtained from the black and white sovereigns. Previously, Yi Xian had swallowed the mysterious heaven pearl, and an enormous amount of energy had appeared in his body. At this moment, with the help of these two ancient spiritual items, he might be able to merge the 12 heavenly gates into one. Roar! Yi Xian opened his mouth wide and swallowed the two divine items in one go. Two extremely terrifying strands of essence suddenly exploded out from his body. At the same time, Yi Xian had been suppressing the energy of the mysterious heaven pearl in his body. At this moment he released all of it. When the three extremely majestic ancient spiritual qis intertwined in his body, his entire body erupted with an extremely terrifying aura. Rumble! Yi Xian's body let out a terrifying roar. His entire body was as red as soldering iron. Waves of terrifying yuan qis overflowed from his body. Even terrifying veins were squirming all over his body. Arg! Yi Xian roared repeatedly. The 12 heavenly gates rotated at a terrifying speed that they had never seen before. The terrifying reincarnation halos transformed into streaks of light that constantly exploded the surrounding void. Chapter 1800. Rumble. The 12 heavenly gates rotated terrifyingly as inexplicable auras burst forth. The terrifying halo distorted the space around them, and even Yi Xian himself started to become blurry. Combine! Boom! Time seemed to stop and space seemed to be frozen. The 12 heavenly gates suddenly stopped, and a terrifying aura was emitted from Yi Xian's body. Rumble! In the next moment, something terrifying happened. The 12 heavenly gates started to overlap and showed signs of combining. However, Yi Xian's face was pale and blood was flowing out from the corner of his mouth. The 12 heavenly gates was a legend from ancient times. Those who could reach this step were not rare, but they were all people from the strongest three great eras. Wanting to combine the 12 heavenly gates into one was a great calamity. Even in the three strongest eras, it was unknown how many experts had fallen at this stage. At this moment, Yi Xian was combining the 12 heavenly gates. He had enough foundation, and he had devoured the three ancient spiritual items. The energy he had now was enough for him to combine the 12 heavenly gates. However, there was a huge problem with this. Although Yi Xian could combine the 12 heavenly gates by devouring the three ancient spiritual items, he had to suffer inhuman pain during the process. The pain came from the soul because combining the 12 heavenly gates would not only change one's physical cultivation, but also one's soul. The process of increasing one's soul would cause one's soul to disperse and die if one's willpower was not strong enough. Some people might ask, with Yi Xian's tough journey, his willpower is already as strong as a rock. What is this pain in the soul? They were wrong. The combination of the 12 heavenly gates was the last stage to cross to the next realm. It was also known as the complete immortal realm. It was completely different from the combination of the 9 heavenly gates. The power of combining the 12 heavenly gates would directly target Yi Xian's soul and even shatter it. From then on, he would become a walking corpse. Yi Xian let out a low roar of extreme pain. The veins on his body wriggled like maggots. His eyes turned crimson red, and a large amount of blood vessels could be seen. The pain coming from his physical body was nothing. The most terrifying thing was that Yi Xian's soul was collapsing. If this continued, his soul would collapse and he would die. Rumble! The 12 heavenly gates overlapped each other, and faintly formed a heavenly gate. This heavenly gate was blurry and illusory, but it released an extremely terrifying aura. This aura was heavy and desolate, giving people the feeling that the heavens were collapsing. Just the release of this aura caused the surrounding void to explode. During the process of the 12 heavenly gates merging into one, Yi Xian's soul was gradually crumbling, and even his physical body was constantly exploding. Streams of blood mist sprayed out from all parts of his body. Persevere. Stop. I won't die. Yi Xian crazily activated the cultivation in his body and used his tenacious willpower to endure the pain of his soul collapsing. He roared crazily in his heart. Since his youth until now, what kind of calamity had he not endured? He had to walk the path of combining the 12 heavenly gates, and he had to face it. This was because this was a path that he had to go through to become stronger. He would not allow himself to fall at this stage. Pooh! A mouthful of blood spurted out. Yi Xian's eyes started to lose focus. His soul had already collapsed halfway, and the process of combining the 12 heavenly gates was only halfway done. I can't take it anymore. Finally, Yi Xian's consciousness started to blur. It was not that he could not endure it, but the collapse of his soul made it impossible for him to continue. At this moment, a wave of fatigue swept over him, and it contained an unimaginable darkness. Bang! Finally Yi Xian fell. He did not have the slightest aura of a living person. A wisp of death aura started to grow on his body, and the so-called forbidden death light started to surround him. At this stage, it meant that Yi Xian was about to fail in combining the 12 heavenly gates. If he really died at this stage, with his foundation and cultivation, he might become a forbidden figure. However, the 12 heavenly gates were still fusing. It was just that the death aura on Yi Xian's body became denser and denser. It was likely that before the 12 heavenly gates fused successfully, Yi Xian would be completely dead. Where is this? Yi Xian suddenly opened his eyes and looked around in confusion. He remembered that his soul had collapsed and he was about to die. But his consciousness woke up again, and he appeared in a void. There was no sky, no earth, no chaotic universe, and no eternal starry sky. There was only nothingness, a void. He did not even know if it existed. Yi Xian did not even know what kind of state he was in. In this void, there was no concept of time, no concept of eternal laws. There was only nothingness. Nothing existed, but everything seemed to exist. You're here. Suddenly, an eternal and lonely voice sounded, waking Yi Xian up. He was even more confused as he looked for the source of the voice. Who are you? Where are you? Where am I? Yi Xian asked 3 questions in a row. His voice echoed in the void. This is your soul origin. It can also be said that it is my soul origin. Dong dong dong. A dark figure walked out from the corner. His figure was blurry and illusory, but his entire body was boundlessly dark, making it impossible to see his face clearly. Who are you? Yi Xian asked in a daze. He did not know why, but when he saw the dark figure, he felt a sense of familiarity. It was as if the other party was his family, as if they were connected by blood. Who am I? The dark figure muttered, then sighed. He looked at Yi Xian and said, I am you, and you are me. Do you know who I am now? You are me? Boom. Yi Xian felt as if he had been struck by lightning. He stared at the dark figure in a daze, and did not recover for a long time. This was because someone had once said the same thing to him, and that person was his future self. Although the future was illusory, it truly existed. Because in ancient times, the past, present, and future, this timeline was eternally unchanging. This is our first official meeting. Perhaps you will be surprised and have many doubts in your heart, but none of this is important. Because with the passage of time, you will understand everything, the dark figure said softly. You are my previous life? You are the taboo of taboo. You are one of the few people who shocked the heavens and the earth. Yi Xian suppressed the shock in his heart. He looked solemnly at the dark figure, waiting for him to give him an answer. Previous life? The dark figure murmured, then looked up at Yi Xian. The darkness around him slowly receded, revealing his true appearance. Chapter 1801. Boom. When Yi Xian saw the person in front of him, even though he was mentally prepared, he was still shocked and stunned on the spot. What did he see? Yi Xian saw himself. He saw another him. They were exactly the same. There was no difference at all. If there was a difference, it would be that the him standing in front of him had an additional aura that made him sad. This aura made his mind chaotic to the extreme. What is a past life? The dark figure seemed to have sensed Yi Xian's shock. He murmured softly, and there was an indescribable aura flowing around him. If you think that I am your past life, then I am your past life. Actually, you don't have to worry about this. Because you will always be you. Whether it is your past life or this life, you are still yourself. The dark figure paused for a moment and looked at Yi Xian with a gaze that made his heart tremble. You might be wondering if I will take over your body and reappear in the eternal universe. But have you ever thought about it? You are me and I am you. How can there be such a thing as taking over my body? I cultivate the eternal universe. I control the vast universe. I once entered the gate of reincarnation and did not die. Although I lost in the battle with the utmost being, it was still glorious. Although I lost, my heart did not give up. Therefore I passed away, and you were born in this life. You and I are one, and we have been comprehending the strongest technique of all time, just to break the curse of the utmost being. Now you are still very weak. Not only have you not awakened those distant memories of the past, you have not even stepped through the 12 heavenly gates. Now, you still need to search for your lost memories. Only when that time comes, maybe we will succeed in comprehending the strongest technique of all time. Break the chaos, break through the ages past, present, and future. This is our strongest technique, and it is also our only chance. Go to the Absolute Heaven Palace, and take back what belongs to us. That will help you find your lost memories. Buzz! The dark figure gradually became illusory, and it was obvious that he was about to disappear in front of Yi Xian. What is your name? Seeing that the dark figure was about to leave, Yi Xian roared. He was at a loss, and did not know if he should believe the other party's words. My name is Huang. But this is not my name. This name is yours. Because we are the strongest in the eternal universe, and only we are worthy of this name. The dark figure lightly spoke. The void faintly began to shatter, and Yi Xian's consciousness was about to return to his body. Wait. At this moment, Yi Xian did not have the time to ask. He only wanted to know the whereabouts of a person. Lu Bai. Do you know that Lu Bai is also a taboo among taboos? How is he now? Yi Xian asked anxiously. Yi Xian had been searching for Lu Bai for many years, but he disappeared into thin air, without any information. According to the taboo characters, Lu Bai was the reincarnation of a taboo. This was also Yi Xian's greatest worry. He was afraid that when Lu Bai appeared again, he would not be the person he was familiar with, but the so-called taboo of taboo. Him. At the mention of Lu Bai, the aura of the dark figure that was about to dissipate froze. You are afraid that he is not the person you are familiar with? The dark figure whispered. Yes, I have been searching for the taboo heaven law, and I have been collecting the 12 heaven-shattering cauldrons for him, Yi Xian said. He has his own path to walk. His path is completely different from yours and mine. If there comes a day when he wants to kill you, perhaps I will settle things with him. This can also be considered as settling the karma of the past. The dark figure sighed softly. Kill me? Yi Xian was stunned. He could not understand the meaning of the dark figure's words. Why would he kill me? Yi Xian was stunned. Time is like morning dew, like a dream and like an illusion. He is not him, and he is him. Who can say for sure? The dark figure sighed. Buzz! The dark figure finally disappeared. Yi Xian's consciousness was also being pulled back into his body. This made him roar anxiously. When can we meet again? When you awaken your memories and become Huang. Because the so-called meeting again is only your lost memories. The dark figure's voice was faintly discernible. Boom! Outside. Yi Xian suddenly opened his eyes. The 12 heavenly gates had already merged into one. A powerful force bloomed on Yi Xian's body. His aura was terrifying to the extreme. The most shocking thing was that Yi Xian's body was as good as new. It was releasing a shocking light. Even his soul was like a glazed diamond. His entire person was raised to a new level from inside out. However, Yi Xian did not feel any excitement from the merging of the 12 heavenly gates. He was still immersed in the conversation with the dark figure. I am him, and he is me? Perhaps Lu Bai will kill me. The strongest technique of all time, past, present, and future? Recover my lost memories. Yi Xian muttered to himself. His expression was sluggish, and he seemed to be in a trance. This experience made it impossible for him to calm down. As the saying goes, the more you know, the more troubles you will have. Regardless of whether what the other party said was true or false, Yi Xian could not choose to ignore it. Moreover, Yi Xian had a feeling that the other party was not lying to him. This feeling was extremely strong, as if the two of them were the same person. How could he lie to himself? Phew! Yi Xian slowly exhaled a turbid breath. He calmed himself down because the more he thought, the more troubles he had. Only by calming down could he plan his next step. Finally, Yi Xian calmed down. He suppressed his chaotic thoughts and began to meditate to feel the power he possessed. Rumble! Yi Xian activated his cultivation. A heavenly gate slowly rose behind him. Then it rumbled and rotated in a mysterious way. Crack! Something terrifying and astonishing happened. When the heavenly gate rotated, the light of reincarnation appeared. The terrifying power of reincarnation disrupted the eternal void. Even time and all things began to scatter. The power of reincarnation? Is this the true power of reincarnation? Yi Xian muttered in astonishment. His eyes flashed with extreme excitement. Although he had opened the 12 heavenly gates in the past, only a single halo of reincarnation would fall from each heavenly gate. This was different from the power of reincarnation. This halo of reincarnation seemed powerful, but it was still far from the power of reincarnation. The so-called reincarnation was the sinking of all things. The chaotic universe had experienced 12 periods of destruction and reconstruction. This was the so-called reincarnation. Even the heavenly gate was called the gate of reincarnation. But now, the 12 heavenly gates had merged into one. Yi Xian finally controlled the true power of reincarnation. Although this gate of reincarnation was still very weak, it truly existed. This was a great surprise for Yi Xian. However, Yi Xian still could not figure out how terrifying the power of reincarnation was. He still needed to test it out in actual combat. Yi Xian examined his physical body and soul again. He found that his overall body had improved by a level. Compared to his previous combat strength, it could be said that he had reached a higher level. He was not afraid of forbidden figures, and could even rely on his own cultivation to determine life and death in a battle. Chapter 1802. What was the so-called strength of a living person? At this moment, Yi Xian truly felt it. The combination of the 12 gates of heaven gave him a very good feeling. It was not something those forbidden figures could feel. The living should avoid the easy, and the dead should be killed. Yi Xian was a living person. This was the difference between him and the forbidden figures, and also his greatest potential. Although the forbidden figures were strong, they were dead. Only the living could laugh in the end. Only when the 12 gates of heaven were combined did Yi Xian truly understand the meaning of this sentence. Buzz! Yi Xian stood up abruptly. The vast gates of heaven behind him dissipated. His whole body returned to normal, and no powerful aura was emitted from him. Returning to the origin, body and mind as one. At this moment, Yi Xian seemed to be calm, but in fact he was even more terrifying. Even the forbidden figures could not see through his depth. Go! Yi Xian directly stepped into the gates of heaven. The journey to the ancient divine mountain had just begun. There were many ancient great opportunities here. Perhaps they could help him break through to the complete immortal realm. One step. Only one step left. As long as Yi Xian could break through to the great circle of the immortal realm, he would step into a whole new realm. As for what the next realm was, although Yi Xian didn't know, he could feel that it would definitely surpass those so-called forbidden figures. However, what kind of realm would a living person enter after breaking through to the complete immortal realm? This was a question he had to answer himself. Because after the 3 strongest eras, no living person had entered this realm. Even the forbidden figures did not know. According to the forbidden figures, the next realm was the realm of earth-shattering, which was the forbidden of forbidden figures. However, after experiencing so many things, Yi Xian directly denied this, saying, even if he entered the next realm, he would not be able to reach the realm of earth-shattering. Because the reason was simple. Whether it was the previous life he had just encountered, or the pair of eyes he saw in the death cage, they were all earth-shattering experts. They were also the survivors of the strongest eras. Even the will of the chaotic universe could not do anything to them. It would be a joke if he could reach their level by merely breaking through to the complete immortal realm. It was absolutely impossible. One mustn't forget that in the three strongest eras, there were too many heaven-defying experts aside from this small group of people. These heaven-defying experts were also living people. They had cultivated to the 12 heavenly gates, and even surpassed this realm. However, they still died in the destruction of the reincarnation cycle. Therefore, Yi Xian dared to be extremely certain that his next realm should be the path taken by the heaven-defying experts of the three great eras. He had yet to reach the shocking realm. Throughout the ages, there were as many experts as the sands of the universe. Only 8 people survived the 3 strongest eras. It was unknown how many heaven-defying experts had disappeared in that distant and unknown era. These 8 people were the most powerful existences in all of history. It was unknown how many years they had been through. They could truly be called indestructible existences. Therefore, if Yi Xian wanted to catch up to them, the next step was to break through his current realm. Only by reaching the heights of the heaven-defying experts of the 3 great eras would he be able to peek into that shocking realm. At this moment, Yi Xian's vision was extremely high. He saw a path that even taboo characters could not see. He had also found the right direction. All he needed to do now was to forge ahead. The third divine palace. The moment Yi Xian entered, a sea of yuanqi erupted. Terrifying rumbling sounds came from within the divine palace, accompanied by angry roars. It's them? Yi Xian's eyes moved. Just by sensing the aura, he already knew who it was. This allowed him to use the calamity transformation and enter the void, rapidly moving towards the aura. Boom! 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 In the deepest part of the divine palace, the black and white sovereigns were in a frenzied battle with an ancient divine general puppet. The battle had already reached its climax. The black and white sovereigns had already suppressed the ancient divine general. Clearly, it would not take long for them to defeat it. And the cause of this battle was a painting scroll. A simple and modeled painting scroll was placed on a stone platform. Although it did not release any aura, the modeled traces on the painting scroll were enough to tell that it had existed for countless years. Yi Xian arrived stealthily. He looked indifferently at the battle between the black and white sovereigns and the ancient divine general. A sinister smile appeared on his lips. As the saying goes, when the sandpiper and the clam fight, the fisherman benefits. He had come at the right time. He had set his sights on the treasures of every divine palace. However, before he snatched the treasures, Yi Xian's heart was filled with killing intent. At this moment, the black and white sovereigns were fighting fiercely and did not notice his arrival. If he did not secretly stab them, it would not be in line with Yi Xian's character. Wang! A wisp of samsara power rippled on Yi Xian's fist. The calamity transformation allowed Yi Xian to silently sneak towards the black and white sovereigns. Eternal reincarnation fist. It was fine if Yi Xian did not make a move, but when he did, he would take someone's life. This was his usual style. Furthermore, he had just combined the 12 heaven gates, giving birth to the samsara power. This punch could be said to be extremely vicious. Boom! Yi Xian punched out towards the black sovereign king's heart. Although he did not use his full strength, he still used 80% of his cultivation. He wanted to kill the black sovereign king in one blow. Be careful, taboo characters were taboo characters after all. Yi Xian's sneak attack immediately caused the white sovereign king to be greatly alarmed. He immediately discovered Yi Xian. Unfortunately, the white sovereign king's warning was too late. Yi Xian had been preparing for this attack for a long time. Following the black sovereign king's sorrowful roar, fresh blood spurted out from his back. Yi Xian's punch had directly penetrated his heart. That terrifying bloody hole was extremely obvious, causing him to suffer heavy injuries. You are courting death. The white sovereign king roared with hatred. He immediately gave up on attacking the ancient divine general and sent a terrifying taboo technique towards Yi Xian. Scram! With the 12 heaven gates combined and the samsara power nurtured, the Yi Xian at this moment was even more terrifying than before. Why would he fear the white sovereign king's attack? Boom! The eternal reincarnation fist was sent out, clashing directly with the White Sovereign King. The samsara power was indeed terrifying. Although Yi Xian had only nurtured one, it was enough to send the White Sovereign King flying. One of his palms turned into dust, and the deathly aura on his body was faintly dispersing. However, Yi Xian was also sent flying after clashing with the White Sovereign King's attack. However, he did not suffer any injuries. With the heaven gates as one, he really had a stance of being invulnerable. Yi Xian, you despicable person! Once again, he was ambushed by Yi Xian. This was not the first time. Although the Black Sovereign King had suffered heavy injuries, his hatred for Yi Xian had also soared. At the same time that he hated Yi Xian to death, the Black Sovereign King was also terrified. This was because he was actually unable to recover from his injuries. A mysterious force actually spread out from his heart, and it even had the tendency to spread throughout his body. However, this was not the end. The ancient divine general that had been suppressed by them finally had a chance to catch his breath under Yi Xian's sneak attack. His body erupted with terrifying ancient divine light as he charged towards the Black Sovereign King. Chapter 1803. Bang! The ancient god general landed a punch on Black Sovereign King's wound, sending him flying. Large amounts of flesh and blood fell from Black Sovereign King's body. He had suffered consecutive blows from Yi Xian and the ancient god general, causing him to become dispirited and listless. Kill! Although the ancient god general was a puppet, it was still a terrifying technique created by an ancient expert. It did not give Black Sovereign King any chance to catch his breath, as it attacked him once again. Let's go! White Sovereign King instantly appeared in front of Black Sovereign King, wanting to bring him away. However, Yi Xian would not let go of this opportunity to beat a dog that was down. Boom! Yi Xian took a step forward and blocked their path. A vast heavenly gate opened as Yi Xian exploded with a terrifying might. 12 heavenly gates combined into one? Seeing the vast heavenly gate behind Yi Xian, White Sovereign King cried out in shock. He did not expect Yi Xian to be able to combine the heavenly gates into one in the ancient desolate ground. The two of you can go to hell. Yi Xian did not waste any words as he summoned his heaven's punishing halberd. A strand of samsara energy rippled on the halberd as the terrifying tip of the halberd glowed. A terrifying killing intent locked onto the two of them. Die! Yi Xian struck out with his halberd as the heavenly gates moved along with him. The terrifying heaven's punishing halberd went straight for Black Sovereign King. After all, Black Sovereign King was heavily injured, and one had to pick on the soft persimmon. Yi Xian understood this logic. Damn it! Facing Yi Xian's despicable and shameless actions, White Sovereign King cursed as he raised his hand to meet Yi Xian's attack. Poochie! The heaven's punishing halberd was known as the #1 killing weapon in all of history. Furthermore, with Yi Xian's samsara energy, how could White Sovereign King's body withstand its sharpness? The halberd pierced through White Sovereign King's palm and sliced off half of his palm. Ah! The White Sovereign King cried out in pain as he retreated with the Black Sovereign King. However, behind them was the ancient divine general, who sent a punch towards them. Besieged from the front and back, he was in a hopeless situation. If Black Sovereign King was at his peak, with the two taboos working together, he would not have ended up in such a predicament. However, Black Sovereign King was heavily injured. With just White Sovereign King alone, it was impossible for him to be a match for Yi Xian and the ancient divine general. Bang! The ancient god general's fist landed on the Black Sovereign King's body, causing his entire body to be bathed in blood as he crashed heavily onto the ground. Die! Yi Xian grinned as he approached. The heaven-destroying halberd slashed across the sky, exploding with the terrifying power of reincarnation as it slashed down at the White Sovereign King. The White Sovereign King was retreating because Yi Xian's attack was too terrifying. The combination of the heaven's punishing halberd and the power of reincarnation was too powerful. Furthermore, there was the threat of the ancient divine general. She did not dare to fight Yi Xian head-on. The White Sovereign King's retreat didn't matter, but it directly exposed the Black Sovereign King. A sinister smile appeared on Yi Xian's face. Actually, this attack was not aimed at the White Sovereign King. Yi Xian's real target was the Black Sovereign King. Pooh! One halberd. It was just one halberd. This halberd had severed the Black Sovereign King's waist. Large amounts of blood spurted out from the Black Sovereign King's waist. It was a ghastly sight. Black Sovereign. The White Sovereign King's eyes were bloodshot. Her scarlet eyes were filled with endless hatred. She wanted to save the Black Sovereign King. But Yi Xian alone was enough to render her helpless. What more the ancient divine general? What should she do? At this moment, the White Sovereign King quickly calmed down. After weighing the pros and cons, she could only make the decision that was most beneficial to her. Leave. Yes, leave. She had no way of saving the Black Sovereign King. She could only retreat helplessly. Otherwise, under the combined attacks of the ancient divine general and Yi Xian, she might very well die here. Boom! The White Sovereign King transformed into a beam of light and left for the next divine palace. Yi Xian did not stop her. After all, the White Sovereign King still had her battle prowess. It was not bad to be able to keep the Black Sovereign King here. Boom! At the next moment, the ancient divine general lost its target and immediately treated Yi Xian as an enemy. A terrifying ancient divine light burst out as it punched at Yi Xian. The ancient divine general was a terrifying technique left behind by an ancient expert. Even Yi Xian did not dare to underestimate it. However, Yi Xian had his own means to break through it. Wang. Suddenly, the mysterious symbol on Yi Xian's forehead pulsated. A desolate and heavy aura was emitted. The ancient divine general's figure froze. The punch that was aimed at Yi Xian had actually stopped. Now was the time. Qi. Yi Xian struck out with his halberd, piercing through the ancient divine general. Following an explosion, the ancient divine general exploded. An ancient imprint appeared and was instantly devoured by the mysterious symbol on Yi Xian's forehead. Another ancient imprint. Yi Xian was delighted. Indeed, in every divine palace, there would be an ancient imprint. As long as he gathered all these imprints, he would be able to open the door to the 81st divine palace. According to the dark figure, he would be able to take back what belonged to him. Keep. Yi Xian rolled his sleeves and the scroll painting on the stone platform landed in his hands. However, he did not have the time to look at it. Instead, his gaze landed on the Black Sovereign King. At this moment, the Black Sovereign King had been split in half by Yi Xian. However, the Black Sovereign King was not dead yet. The injuries on his body were not enough to kill him. Dong dong dong. Yi Xian strolled towards the Black Sovereign King. With every step he took, it was as though he was stepping on the sound of death. This caused the Black Sovereign King to roar with bloodshot eyes. You despicable man. The Black Sovereign King glared at Lin Fan. His scarlet eyes were filled with hatred. Despicable? Yi Xian teased with a smile. I don't think I'm despicable. It's just that the winner is king, and the loser is a bandit. Where did the word despicable come from? What do you want? The Black Sovereign King roared in anger. This was because he could feel Yi Xian's killing intent. He knew that Yi Xian would definitely not let him off. What do I want? Yi Xian laughed. However, his laughter was filled with disdain. He looked at the Black Sovereign King with a strange expression. Of course, I want to kill you. Do you think I will let you live? Yi Xian said indifferently. Ha ha ha. Hearing Yi Xian's words, the Black Sovereign King felt as though he had heard an extremely funny joke. Kill me? The Black Sovereign King said hatefully. I'm afraid you don't know. How are you going to kill me as long as my soul is not destroyed? I can even survive the destruction of the primal chaos universe. Even if you combine the 12 heavens gates, you won't be able to kill me. I won't be able to kill you? Forbidden character. What a joke. You are just a bunch of dead people who are struggling at death's door. Yi Xian pretended to be shocked. However, at the next moment, he struck out with his palm and slapped out at the Black Sovereign King. Bang! Blood and flesh flew everywhere as the body was destroyed. Yi Xian's strike had turned the Black Sovereign King's body into ashes. However, at the next moment, the Black Sovereign King's soul also left his body. Yi Xian, you destroyed my body. I will make sure you die a horrible death. The Black Sovereign King roared with hatred. He turned into a black light and was about to leave. His body had been destroyed by Yi Xian, causing his soul to lose its support. This was an extremely great injury to him. If a living person had lost their body, they could still borrow a corpse to be reborn. However, as a forbidden character, his soul could not be sustained by any body. He could only leave this place and reconstruct his body. This would take an extremely long time. The Black Sovereign King had a good plan. However, he had underestimated Yi Xian. How could Yi Xian allow him to leave alive? Suppress. Boom. Without waiting for the Black Sovereign King to leave, the vast heavens gates behind Yi Xian revolved terrifyingly, blocking the Black Sovereign King's path. Rumble. Within the vast heavens gates, reincarnation appeared. The power of reincarnation descended and suppressed the Black Sovereign King's soul. Ah, reincarnation. This is the power of reincarnation. After being invaded by the power of reincarnation, the Black Sovereign King howled in despair. His indestructible soul was shattering. That terrifying light of reincarnation was about to cause his soul to scatter. Even if he managed to escape the destruction of the primal chaos universe, under Yi Xian's power of reincarnation, the Black Sovereign King could only die with his body and soul destroyed. He had no means of resisting. Yi Xian, you will die a horrible death. Under the Black Sovereign King's final struggle, his soul exploded. An extremely dense forbidden death light permeated out. Swallow. Yi Xian smiled malevolently. The calamity immortal transformation was activated. He opened his mouth and swallowed the boundless death light. Clearly, he was trying to strengthen his cultivation. Chapter 1804. Rumble. Yi Xian's body swelled up as boundless death energy was constantly devouring and refining it. But at the next moment, Yi Xian's face changed abruptly. The boundless death energy that he had devoured was now being spat out. Boom! The light of death suddenly appeared, causing the void to collapse. The terrifying death energy essence surged like a tide. Yi Xian frowned with an embarrassed expression. He couldn't devour it. Originally, Yi Xian was prepared to devour the death energy essence left behind by the Black Sovereign King, to boost his cultivation. Yi Xian's idea was good. After all, the forbidden character's energy was enough to boost his cultivation by a large margin. But after devouring the Black Sovereign King's cultivation, Yi Xian realized that he was gravely mistaken. The reason was simple. The taboo character was a dead person, while Yi Xian was a living person. He had already merged the 12 heavenly gates into one and reached the Great Perfection realm. His body was filled with the energy of a living person. So how could he possibly devour the energy of a dead person? To put it bluntly, forbidden characters were people who had taken the wrong path. The energy they cultivated wasn't on the same level as Yi Xian. Even if Yi Xian forcefully devoured the Black Sovereign King's cultivation, it wouldn't benefit him at all. What a pity! Yi Xian sighed in his heart. He couldn't eat the meat that was sent to his mouth. He had intended to kill a few more forbidden characters to devour, so that he could enter the next realm faster. But from the looks of it, there was no need to consider these forbidden characters anymore. If he wanted to break through to the next realm, he could only make use of this trip to the ancient desolate ground. However, Yi Xian was still a bit unwilling. If the Black Sovereign King's cultivation was wasted like this, then it wouldn't be his personality. Come. Yi Xian swung his sleeves and instantly absorbed the boundless energy into his hands. He then formed a mysterious seal with both hands and compressed the death energy until it turned into a terrifying energy ball. After doing all this, Yi Xian finally smiled. He kept the item carefully. Although he couldn't devour it himself, it was still a good choice to use it as a killing weapon against his enemies. At this moment, Yi Xian finally had the time to look at the scroll painting in his hand. After all, the treasures that could be stored in the divine palaces were all items with great origins. The scroll painting was simple and unadorned. It was unknown what material was used to make it, but for it to be preserved after so many years meant that it was an item from the 3 eras. Hua! Yi Xian slowly pushed the scroll away and looked at it. However, when Yi Xian saw what was inside the scroll, his entire body was stunned. He was completely stunned on the spot. and even his hand that was holding the scroll was trembling to the extreme. How is this possible? Yi Xian muttered in a trembling voice. He couldn't believe his eyes because he saw a person in the scroll painting. A person that he couldn't be more familiar with. Lu Bai. The person in the scroll painting was Lu Bai. He was dressed in white and looked otherworldly. His eyes were like the stars, and they flickered with a deep and mysterious intent. Even though he was separated by the scroll painting, Yi Xian felt that the person in the scroll painting seemed to have come alive. No, it's not him. Yi Xian suddenly came to his senses and immediately denied the speculation that the person in the scroll was Lu Bai. The scroll painting was so lifelike that the person in the scroll seemed to have come alive. There was even a faint aura that made his heart palpitate. Moreover, although the person in the scroll looked very similar to Lu Bai gave off a gentle and refined feeling, while the person in the scroll was a little colder. Even his eyes were extremely indifferent. This strange feeling made Yi Xian's heart tremble slightly. If he only judged from the person in the scroll, Yi Xian was sure that this was not the Lu Bai he knew. Even if the appearance was the same, the aura and personality were definitely different. Huff! Yi Xian exhaled a mouthful of turbid air and slowly put away the scroll painting. His eyes were deep and flickering, and countless thoughts flashed through his mind. If Yi Xian's guess was correct, the scroll painting in his hand was passed down from the three great eras. The fact that it was stored here meant that the person in the scroll was an extremely extraordinary existence in the three great eras. In other words, was the person in the scroll Lu Bai's previous life? Was he one of the small group of people who shocked the heavens and earth? Yi Xian did not dare to think too deeply, but he had a faint premonition that this premonition was directed at Lu Bai. Perhaps the two of them would meet soon. This premonition was extremely strong. So strong that Yi Xian was certain that perhaps when he entered the 81st Celestial Palace, some unknown existences would appear. Yi Xian suppressed his trembling thoughts. It was useless for him to let his imagination run wild now. The first thing he had to do was to plunder all the treasures in the Celestial Palaces, collect all the ancient imprints, and push open the gate to the 81st Celestial Palace. He had to break through to the next great realm in this ancient land of peril. Let's go. Yi Xian did not waste any more time, and quickly moved on to the next Celestial Palace. Time was merciless. It had been 100 million years since Yi Xian entered the ancient God Mountain. He had also stayed in the ancient God Mountain for 100 million years. These 100 million years were not considered long for Yi Xian. As he continued to explore each ancient God Palace, he could be said to have gained a lot. Ancient divine objects, ancient secret manuals, many ancient divine weapons, supreme treasures, and even some ancient spirit pills and secret medicines. During these 100 million years, Yi Xian had been constantly shuttling through the various celestial palaces. Not only did he obtain many ancient opportunities, but he also did not stop cultivating. Of course, every time Yi Xian entered a celestial palace, he would search for the ancient imprints within. This was so that when he went to the 81st celestial palace, he could open the gate to the last celestial palace. This was because the dark figure said that there was something he wanted to take back there. This item was very important to Yi Xian, so Yi Xian always kept it in mind. During this time, Yi Xian also met a few familiar faces, such as the Lord of Human Tao, the ancestor of all beasts, and the Eternal Shadow. However, Yi Xian only greeted them and continued on his path of cultivation. The only thing that Yi Xian felt was that although he had plundered many ancient divine objects in the past 100 million years, many treasures had been taken away by other taboo figures. After all, everyone entered a different celestial palace. These celestial palaces were like a maze. Yi Xian had entered the same celestial palace several times, which could be said to be a waste of time. However, Yi Xian was glad that although some treasures in the ancient god palaces had been taken away by the taboo figures, no one had discovered the secret of the ancient imprints. Therefore, every time Yi Xian went to an ancient god palace, he would be able to collect an ancient imprint. According to his calculations, he had already gone through most of the ancient god palaces. He only needed a few more ancient imprints to open the 81st Celestial Palace. However, Yi Xian was puzzled. He had gone to so many ancient god palaces and obtained so many opportunities. Why had he not seen the 11th small cauldron? Chapter 1805. Could it be that the 11th small cauldron had already been taken by a taboo character? Thinking of this, Yi Xian's face suddenly turned gloomy. He didn't care about other things, but he was determined to get the 11th small cauldron. He wouldn't allow anyone to touch it. Time was like water, passing in the blink of an eye. Another 100 million years passed. Yi Xian had already set foot in 79 ancient divine palaces. Except for some so-called ancient spiritual items, he didn't gain anything else. According to Yi Xian's own calculation, the 11th Yuanhui had already reached 1 billion years. There were still 200 million years left before the 11th Yuanhui would end, and the 12th Yuanhui would start. What a pity! During the 200 million years in the ancient divine mountain, Yi Xian had swallowed a large number of ancient spiritual items, hoping to push his cultivation to the next realm. However, what made Yi Xian extremely helpless was that although his cultivation was increasing day by day, he couldn't see any hope of breaking through to the next realm. Even though Yi Xian had studied many techniques left behind from the ancient times, and learned many divine skills and secret skills of the ancient experts, he still couldn't peek into the next realm. Now, Yi Xian was still at the complete immortal realm. He was only one step away from entering a new world. However, it was also this step that made him unable to touch the next realm, because he couldn't touch it. This was also the most distressing thing for Yi Xian. Absorbing the yuan qi of heaven and earth every day and swallowing and refining many ancient spiritual items, Yi Xian's cultivation was as vast and terrifying as the universe. However, there was no qualitative change. Outsiders couldn't understand this kind of depressing feeling. Since he couldn't peek into the next realm, Yi Xian could only go with the flow. He had been searching for the 80th divine palace, but he couldn't find it. No matter how he shuttled through the ancient divine palaces, he couldn't even see the shadow of the 80th divine palace. Other than the last divine palace, there was only the 80th divine palace that Yi Xian hadn't entered yet. Yi Xian had searched for a long time, which made him wonder if he needed some sort of opportunity to enter the 80th divine palace. Rumble! All of a sudden, while Yi Xian was thinking, the entire mountain began to rumble. A blinding light sprayed out, causing Yi Xian's eyes to hurt. He unconsciously closed his eyes. It was also at this moment that a feeling of the world spinning appeared. It was as if the entire ancient sacred mountain had changed. When Yi Xian opened his eyes again, the scene before him shocked him. At this moment, he was already in a brand new ancient divine palace. And two things had attracted his attention. Two stone platforms were placed in the depths of the ancient divine palace. Each stone platform held an item. Yi Xian looked around and his breathing quickened. Small cauldron. A small cauldron. Yi Xian was very sure that the small cauldron placed on the stone platform was the 11th heaven-shattering cauldron that he was looking for. Rumble. Suddenly, while Yi Xian was extremely excited, several figures were eerily teleported here. They were exploring the many taboos of the ancient sacred mountain with Yi Xian. The Three Lives Flower? As soon as everyone's footsteps landed, someone exclaimed, causing everyone to look at the other stone platform. The Three Lives Flower? Yi Xian's expression abruptly changed as he instantly looked towards the other stone platform. Sure enough, he saw a divine flower taking root on the stone platform. This flower had 3 flowers and 3 leaves. It was constantly changing colors. At first glance it was white, but upon closer inspection, it turned green and then purple. The 3 colors alternated, giving people a blurred and unreal feeling. Moreover, a fragrance quietly rose up, making people feel as if they were floating in the air when they smelled it. Ha ha ha. It has appeared. It has indeed appeared. The Three Lives Flower is indeed on the ancient sacred mountain. We have been here so many times, but it has never appeared. I never expected this flower to appear in this era. The chess ancestor laughed wildly in excitement. He did not even look at the small cauldron. Instead, he stared intently at the Three Lives flower. The greed in his eyes could not be concealed. Not only was the chess ancestor crazily excited, but the eyes of the other taboos were also scarlet. Their bodies emitted extremely terrifying auras, as their gazes landed on the Three Lives flower. Yi Daoyu, this is the item. I was lured here by this item. If I'm not wrong, as long as I consume this flower, I will be able to return to the world as a living person. Human Dao Master secretly transmitted his voice to Yi Xian. His voice was trembling to the extreme. Return to the world as a living person? Yi Xian muttered. He somewhat believed this saying, but he absolutely did not believe that this Three Lives flower would allow them to become one of the few people who could shake the world. If Yi Xian's guess was correct, if a taboos consumed this flower, they should be able to return to the world as a living person. However, they would definitely not be able to stand shoulder to shoulder with those few people. At most, they would become a heaven-defying expert in the three great eras. This was also the realm that Yi Xian wanted to break through to at this moment. Oh, suddenly, Yi Xian's mind raced. His originally dormant cultivation began to circulate on its own. And this change was actually caused by the Three Lives flower. Boom! Yi Xian felt as if he had been struck by lightning. A wave of enlightenment instantly surged into his mind. He stared intently at the strange flower in the depths of the divine palace, as a shocking thought emerged in his mind. If Yi Xian's intuition was correct, it was not only taboos that needed this strange flower to return to the world as a living person. If he wanted to break through to the next realm, this strange flower would be the opportunity for him. This feeling was extremely obvious, and it also caused Yi Xian's heart to churn. However, the expression on Yi Xian's face was very calm, as if he had no interest in this strange flower. I must have this flower. In the next moment, Yi Xian instantly made a decision. Whether it was to break through to the next realm, or to stop these taboos, he had to obtain this flower. Boom! In the next moment, Yi Xian took a step forward and charged toward the stone platform in front of him. Yi Xian's action startled many taboos, and their expressions immediately changed. They all urged their taboos to shoot toward the two stone platforms. This was because all of them wanted this strange flower, and they would not allow anyone else to lay a finger on it. Whoosh whoosh, in the blink of an eye, the taboos had already surrounded the stone platform that contained the Three Lives flower. However, in the next moment these taboos were stunned. This was because Yi Xian had not come for this strange flower. Boom! Yi Xian instantly appeared in front of the small cauldron. In a situation where no one was competing with him, Yi Xian directly took the 11th small cauldron. The process was so smooth that even Yi Xian could not believe it. Originally, Yi Xian's first target was naturally the small cauldron. Although he knew that these taboos were after this strange flower, he did not expect them to value it so much that the small cauldron did not come for it immediately. Chapter 1806. A small cauldron that had existed since time immemorial. This was the 11th small cauldron. At this moment, it was being held in Yi Xian's hand. His heart was filled with excitement, but his expression remained indifferent. If not for the 3 lifetimes flower, Yi Xian would have attracted the attention of many taboos when he snatched the small cauldron. But now the atmosphere was in a deadlock. No one dared to make a move against Yi Xian. After all, the 3 lifetimes flower was the most important. So everyone likes this strange flower. However, I am only interested in the heaven-shattering cauldron. As for the fight for this strange flower, I will not be participating. Yi Xian saw the situation at a glance. He put on a harmless appearance and declared that he was not interested in the flower. He slowly retreated with the small cauldron in his hand. Yi Xian, the White Sovereign King, roared hatefully. She wanted to join forces with the other taboos to attack Yi Xian. But now that everyone wanted to get their hands on the 3 lives flower, how could they possibly provoke Yi Xian? Everyone, this supreme god wants the 3 lifetimes flower. If anyone wants to fight with me, don't blame this supreme god for being impolite. Boom! The primal chaos supremacy was the first to make a move. He was determined to obtain the flower, even if it meant risking his life. After all, This was his chance to become a living person again. With just you. The death supremacy was extremely terrifying. He seemed to have no presence, but he was an old monster who had lived for countless years. His cultivation was extremely terrifying. Boom! Without waiting for the primal chaos supremacy to snatch the flower, the death supremacy sent a slap towards him. As the saying went, a slight move in one part would affect the whole situation. The two taboos' actions seemed to have ignited a terrifying fuse. The other taboos also made their moves towards the 3 lifetimes flower. However, none of the taboos present were to be trifled with. No one would allow others to obtain the flower. A terrifying chaotic battle between taboos immediately erupted. Boom, boom, boom. The divine palace shook as the void collapsed. The taboos attacked each other ferociously. All sorts of terrifying killing techniques were unleashed. How dare you! Just as Aeon Shadow reached for the 3 lives flower, the death god sent a palm strike at him, forcing Aeon Shadow to retreat. Die for this deity. Boom! Chaos God sent a forbidden art at God of Death, but before his strike could land on God of Death's body, the sly old fox, chess ancestor, struck at Chaos God's head with the black and white chessboard. Bang! The primal Chaos Supreme God was indeed terrifying. He turned around and sent the chess ancestor's black and white chessboard flying with a punch. However, the human Tao Master and the ancestor of all beasts both unleashed their forbidden arts at him. Apparently, among these taboos, the primal chaos divine venerable was too ostentatious, and his cultivation was absolutely terrifying. Everyone wanted to eliminate him first. Bang bang! The chaotic divine master blocked the 2 grand arts consecutively. He suddenly realized that the situation was not in his favor. He quickly retreated. Otherwise, if he was surrounded by everyone, he would be in danger of dying. Come, taking advantage of this opening, the white sovereign king instantly grabbed at the 3 lives 3 generations flower. Unfortunately, before she could even touch the flower, the Aeon Shadow struck her with a suppress word, sending her flying. Bang bang bang. The chaotic battle between the taboos was too terrifying. Anyone who got close to the 3 lives 3 generations flower would be attacked by a group. This chaotic battle had reached its climax. At this moment, Yi Xian was far away. He did not participate in this battle at all. Instead, he watched the battle with his deep eyes. From time to time, a sinister glint would flash across his eyes. What a bunch of idiots. They are completely blinded by greed, muttered Yi Xian. Clearly, this battle was not going to end. It was impossible for anyone to obtain the flower. After all, none of the taboos would allow others to obtain the flower. The best way was to withdraw from the battlefield and watch the tigers fight while the mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. These old taboos were not stupid. On the contrary, they were very smart. However, they were caught in this chaotic battle. It could only be said that greed had blinded their eyes. Otherwise, once they calmed down, they would realize that this was a battle with no end in sight. Greed could really make people lose their cool and become extremely crazy. However, it made sense. These taboos had been dead for many years and had been struggling at death's door in the chaotic universe. Their biggest dream was to become a living person again. How could they remain calm in the face of a strange flower that could bring them back to life? However, this was good too. It also gave Yi Xian an opportunity to watch the tigers fight. Otherwise, if these old guys really calmed down, Yi Xian would have nothing to do with them. Whoosh whoosh. Yi Xian was far away from the battlefield. However, he was also moving quietly. 365 array flags were quietly set up and surrounded the many taboos in the center. These 365 formation flags were an extremely vicious formation created by Yi Xian. It was specially used to deal with these taboo figures, and it was also one of his trump cards. At this moment, he was completely using it. However, this was not the end. A banner quietly appeared in his hand. This time, it was as black as ink and emitted a terrifying light. Just looking at it would make one's soul tremble, as if it was about to be shredded. The 9 Extinction Soul Extinguishing Banner. This item was created by Yi Xian, using 81 types of materials, with extreme Yin and poison. It had no effect on the physical body, but it specialized in attacking one's soul. It was extremely vicious, and Yi Xian used it to deal with these taboos. Yi Xian discreetly sent the 9 extinction soul-extinguishing banner into the void, then took out a handful of soul-extinguishing sand and scattered it in the void. He was waiting for the right moment to teach these taboos a lesson. After doing all of this, Yi Xian wasn't in a hurry to make a move, because these taboos were currently in full swing. Only when they were heavily injured would it be the best time for Yi Xian to make a move. As a hunter, the most important thing was patience. Yi Xian was never lacking in patience. He was also waiting for his chance. He was determined to get the 3 lifetimes flower. Yi Xian would never give up on this flower, because it was very likely to be his hope of breaking through to the next major realm. However, before he made his move, Yi Xian still had one more thing to do. He had to remind the human Dao master to quickly withdraw from the battlefield. Yi Xian secretly transmitted this to the human Dao master. This also startled the human Dao master out of his thoughts. He retreated as he fought, gradually breaking away from this fruitless battle. Finally, the human Dao master withdrew from the battlefield and stood by Yi Xian's side. The two of them were far away from the battlefield, watching the taboos fight. The human Dao master also understood what Yi Xian was waiting for. Yi Daoyu, do you feel like something's wrong? Suddenly the human Dao master frowned. She was a woman after all, and women were extremely meticulous. When she calmed down, she noticed something that even Yi Xian had not noticed. What's wrong? Yi Xian was stunned. After the human Dao master's reminder, his heart skipped a beat. He vaguely felt like he had missed something. Yi Daoyu, don't you feel like someone's missing? The human Dao master asked in a low voice. Someone's missing? With the human Dao master's reminder, Yi Xian was stunned. He carefully looked at these taboos, and his mind exploded. Indeed, someone was missing. Chapter 1807. Undying Heaven Lord. Yes, it was him. Ever since entering the 80th palace, Yi Xian's attention had been on the tiny cauldron and the wondrous flower, as well as the battle between these forbidden characters. However, he had neglected one person, an old enemy of his. Undying Heaven Lord. Everyone had been transported to the 80th palace, but only the Undying Heaven Lord hadn't appeared. How was this possible? Yi Xian was drenched in cold sweat. No matter how meticulous his calculations were, he had still exposed the Undying Heaven Lord. Yi Xian had wanted to be the third party to benefit from the tussle between the sandpiper and the clam, but he had completely exposed the Undying Heaven Lord. If he had really taken action, the Undying Heaven Lord would have been the one to benefit in the end. Fortunately, Yi Xian calmed down after the human Dao Lord's reminder. He no longer paid attention to the forbidden battle, and instead began searching for the Undying Heaven Lord. Here, with the 12 gates combined, Yi Xian's divine sense was terrifying to the extreme. He finally found the Undying Heaven Lord's location. He didn't expect the Undying Heaven Lord to have used some unknown secret art to hide in a corner that was extremely difficult to find. If Yi Xian hadn't combined the gates and wanted to find the Undying Heaven Lord, Yi Xian wouldn't have been able to discover his existence. When Yi Xian's gaze landed on the Undying Heaven Lord, the latter's expression changed. He knew that Yi Xian had noticed him, and this made him secretly resentful. The Undying Heaven Lord naturally saw everything Yi Xian had done. He was more than happy to act at the end and take the 3 lives flower. The reason he was so calm was all because of Prison's orders. Before entering the primordial divine mountain, Prison had told him not to fight for the flower after entering the 80th palace. He was to wait for the right time to act. Prison had even given him a strict order. His mission wasn't to obtain the flower, but to enter the 81st palace and stop Yi Xian from obtaining the item inside. Moreover, this was only one of the reasons. The true mission of the Undying Heaven Lord was to seize the item in the 81st Heavenly Palace. If he was unable to do so, he would destroy it on the spot. Undying Heaven Lord didn't dare to slack off when he thought of the person Prison had entrusted him with. Even though he coveted the 3 lives 3 worlds flower, he could only hide in the dark and wait for the right time to make his move. However, now that he had been discovered by Yi Xian, he felt helpless. It seemed that he had no choice but to cooperate with Yi Xian. Yi Xian, I don't want to waste time talking nonsense. With our cultivation bases, as long as we wait for their cultivation bases to drop, the three of us will definitely be able to obtain the flower. At that time, we can split the flower equally. What do you think? The Undying Heaven Lord transmitted his voice. All right. Yi Xian did not waste any time, and immediately agreed. After all, the two of them could not fall out with each other yet. Otherwise, if these taboos discovered him, it would be even more difficult for him to obtain the flower. Rumble. While Yi Xian and Undying Heaven Lord were in cahoots with each other, the great taboos had already unleashed their true strength, and were all injured. Tao of Death. Boom. Finally, the first great taboos to reveal their trump card appeared. The god of death's body emitted a terrifying light of death as the Tao of Death appeared. A terrifying aura that could shake the ancients erupted from his body. Die. His palms were like the sky, suppressing all things. The god of death was in harmony with the Tao of Death. His hands formed terrifying seals as the word death appeared one after another, directly crushing the surrounding great taboos. Bang! 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 The god of death's sudden attack caught these great taboos off guard. He did not relent, and directly reached for the 3 lives 3 worlds flower. Unfortunately, the god of death had underestimated these great taboos. Although there were strong and weak great taboos, each of them had their own trump cards. Ages of eternity, 8 arts combine. The ancient shadow roared continuously. The surrounding space-time was instantly frozen, truly affecting the flow of space-time as he struck towards the god of death. Primal Chaos Overlord. The Primal Chaos Overlord punched out. This punch contained not only the true meaning of the Primal Chaos Tao, but also his terrifying death energy. Rumble. Just the 2 great taboos attacks immediately forced the god of death to retreat. No matter how strong he was, he did not dare to face the terrifying attacks of 2 great taboos head-on. Bang! 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 The 3 great taboos fought again. This time, none of them held back. The entire divine palace was on the verge of collapsing. Fortunately, they were in the ancient forbidden land. Otherwise, if they were in the outside world, the terrifying battle between the 3 great taboos would have destroyed millions of miles of land. Kill! The other great taboos had also used up their trump cards. At this critical moment, none of them dared to hold back. As long as they could get their hands on the 3 lives 3 worlds flower, they would not hesitate to pay any price. Yi Xian. Suddenly, a low roar sounded in Yi Xian's ears, accompanied by a sharp gaze. The owner of this gaze was none other than the Heartless Man. Oh no! Yi Xian's heart skipped a beat. Clearly, the Heartless Man had noticed his presence. Yi Xian, I've brought you to the ancient forbidden land. You've also obtained the 11th small cauldron. Now I need the 3 lives 3 worlds flower. Why aren't you helping me? The Heartless Man was crazily attacking the great taboos, but she was also secretly transmitting her voice to Yi Xian. Hearing the Heartless Man's transmission, Yi Xian chose to remain silent. If he joined the battle now, it was hard to say if he could get his hands on the flower. Moreover, he was just pretending to be polite to the Heartless Man. How could he help her at this time? You want to sit on the mountain and watch the tigers fight? The next moment, the Heartless Man instantly woke up. She immediately guessed Yi Xian's thoughts, which made her expression change. Although the Heartless Man had woken up, it was too late for her to retreat from the battlefield. Facing the attacks of the great taboos, she could only brace herself to resist. Stop, stop! When the Heartless Man realized that Yi Xian had ulterior motives, she felt hatred in her heart. She could only shout loudly, hoping to calm everyone down. Unfortunately, before the Heartless Man could warn everyone, the Ancestor of Beasts threw a punch and interrupted her. Fellow Taoists, stop fighting. If you continue fighting, others will benefit. Suddenly, the Chess Ancestor roared loudly. This old fox was indeed smart. Although the Heartless Man had only shouted a few times, he had already discovered the trick. It was also the Chess Ancestor's shout that stopped the intense battle. Only then did everyone realize that a few people were missing. The next moment, the great taboos broke out in cold sweat. They knew that they had fallen into a fruitless battle because of their greed. You really are a meddlesome old thing. Boom. The next moment, Yi Xian took a step forward. At this moment he could no longer hide. Attack! Yi Xian roared loudly. The human Tao master suddenly attacked. The Undying Heaven Lord also unleashed the great taboo technique that he had been preparing. The formation was activated. 365 formation flags appeared in a terrifying manner, directly trapping all the great taboos in the center. The 9 extinction soul extinguishing banner erupted with a soul extinguishing divine light that swept toward everyone. The soul perishing sand that was hidden in the void also exploded under the control of Yi Xian's will, instantly enveloping all the great taboos. Eternal Reincarnation Fist. Rumble. The vast divine gate rotated terrifyingly. The power of reincarnation rippled on Yi Xian's fist, and he threw a punch at the eternal shadow. Yi Xian had been preparing this attack for a long time. In an instant, it drowned all the great taboos, and the entire divine palace was cracking open. Chapter 1808. Rumble. Undying Human Tao, Yi Xian, and the other two had cultivation levels that were no weaker than taboos. Furthermore, they had been preparing their attacks for a long time. Together with Yi Xian's insidious methods, they had caught the taboos off guard. The first unlucky one was White Sovereign. Having lost Black Sovereign, she was the weakest of the taboos. She was struck by the 9 absolute soul extinguishing banner, and her body was stained with large amounts of soul perishing sand. Large amounts of flesh and blood fell off White Sovereign's body, and her soul was destroyed by the 9 absolute soul extinguishing banner. She let out a hateful roar as she rapidly retreated. Bang! 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 The primal chaos divine sovereign and the eternal shadow endured the attacks of Yi Xian and the other two. However, the two of them were also sent flying. In addition to the fact that they were trapped in Yi Xian's absolute formation, they were at a disadvantage. As for the sly old fox chess ancestor, he had long realized that something was amiss. Furthermore, he was the founder of the Chaos Star Master lineage, and his understanding of array formations was number 1. Yi Xian's array formation naturally could not trap him, so he had long fled the battlefield. As for the ancestor of all beasts, Yi Xian and Human Tao had a good relationship with him, so they did not attack him viciously. All they did was force him to retreat. However, in that instant, the heartless person dodged the attacks of Yi Xian and the other two and headed straight for the 3 lives flower. It was obvious that Yi Xian's attack, which had been brewing for a long time, also gave her a chance to pluck the flower. Scram! Boom! Without waiting for heartless person to pluck the flower, Undying Heaven Lord roared as he slashed out with his Undying Heaven saber. His other hand reached for the 3 lifetimes flower. A mere junior of the later generations dares to compete with me? Bang! Heartless person was the master of destiny from the previous Chaos verse. Naturally, she would not be afraid of Undying Heaven Lord. She raised her jade-like hand and clashed with Undying Heaven Lord. Boom! The two of them were sent flying, creating a huge opportunity for Yi Xian and Human Tao Lord. Human Tao, go and pluck the flower. I'll block them for you. Boom! Yi Xian quickly sent a voice transmission and stood in front of Human Tao. This was because Yi Xian knew that with the means he had set up, he could only stop these taboos for a while and would not be able to cause any harm to them. A taboo was a taboo after all. Even if they were just zombies in Yi Xian's eyes, these people were already standing at the peak of the universe. They weren't easy to deal with. Yi Xian, since you're courting death, I'll fulfill your wish. Even if he had misgivings about Yi Xian and didn't dare to kill him, Yi Xian dared to snatch the 3 lives 3 eras flower. Therefore, he had to kill Yi Xian. It wasn't just Aeon Shadow who was filled with killing intent. The primal chaos god followed closely behind, and even the White Sovereign King, who was heavily injured, locked his killing intent onto Yi Xian. Rumble! The next moment, the 3 taboos came together. 3 great taboo techniques came crashing down on Yi Xian. The terrifying killing intent caused one's heart to tremble. If it were anyone else, they wouldn't dare to take on the combined attack of the three. If it were before, Yi Xian would definitely retreat. He definitely wouldn't fight the three taboos, because he didn't have the strength to do so. However, things were different now. At this moment, Yi Xian was one with the Heaven's Gate, and was only one step away from entering the next realm. Although he was still not a match for the three taboos, it wasn't enough to make him flee. The most important reason was that he wanted to buy time for Human Tao Master, so that he could successfully pluck the 3 lives 3 eras flower. Eternal Dream. Chaotic Sky 7 kills. Yi Xian frantically activated Eternal Dream. His aura suddenly changed. The Heaven's Gate behind him rotated terrifyingly, while the Heaven's Vanquishing Halberd burst out with a ferocious light. Kill. Yi Xian didn't retreat. Instead, he advanced towards the 3 taboos. This caused the 3 taboos' expressions to change. They didn't expect Yi Xian to dare to fight them head-on. Boom! The Eternal Reincarnation Fist collided with the Primal Chaos Hierarch. The Chaotic Sky 7 kills halberd slashed at the Eternal Shadow. Suddenly, a terrifying energy vortex erupted. The White Sovereign's attack also arrived in an instant. However, Yi Xian's reaction was extremely fast. He turned around and smashed his halberd at the White Sovereign. Rumble! In an instant, the 4 of them engaged in a chaotic battle. Yi Xian's Heaven's Gate was impenetrable. His body was surrounded by the terrifying power of reincarnation. This caused the 3 taboos' hearts to tremble. However, Yi Xian didn't have it easy either. He was constantly suppressed by the 3 taboos. The Primal Chaos Hierarch and Eternal Shadow's methods were too terrifying. They gave him an extremely dangerous feeling. One had to know that these 2 old fellows had existed for countless years. They were definitely much more terrifying than the other taboos. It was already difficult for him to resist the 3 of them for a moment. He could only hope that the Human Tao Master could quickly snatch the 3 lifetimes flower. Under Yi Xian's tenacious resistance, the 3 taboos were finally held back. The Human Tao Master knew that time waited for no one. He quickly wanted to pluck the 3 lifetimes flower. However, a sudden change occurred. The Death Hierarch arrived with a loud rumble. A death taboo came slapping at the Human Tao Master. The Deathless Heaven Lord was engaged in an intense battle with Heartless, and couldn't come over to help the Human Tao Master. It had to be said that although the Human Tao Master was initially a taboo, his cultivation was absolutely terrifying. Although he encountered the Death Hierarch, he didn't fall into a disadvantageous position. Good chance. In the next moment, everyone fell into a chaotic battle. The chess ancestor was overjoyed as he rushed towards the 3 lifetimes flower. However, he had forgotten that the ancestor of all beasts also wanted the flower. How could he possibly let him have it? Boom! The ancestor of all beasts roared and blocked the chess ancestor. The 2 of them instantly engaged in battle. No one could obtain the ancient flower. Damn it! Yi Xian cursed inwardly. He had miscalculated. He originally thought that with the means he had set up, and the help of the Human Tao Master, and the Deathless Heaven Lord, he should be able to obtain the flower. However, these taboo characters all had profound cultivation. Even if they were ambushed by him, they were only temporarily forced to retreat. Now that they had made a comeback, they were instantly pulled into the chaotic battle. What should he do? Yi Xian was retreating in defeat, facing the 3 taboos' frenzied attacks. Even his Heaven's Gate as one was extremely strenuous, let alone retaliate. Although he had just nurtured the power of samsara, causing the 3 taboos to be extremely wary of him, Yi Xian's cultivation was depleted. It was only a matter of time before he was defeated. If it was only a taboo character, or even a life-and-death battle, Yi Xian still had great confidence. However, the 3 taboos weren't something he could withstand. Everyone, thank you. Suddenly, a faint voice sounded. This stunned everyone in the chaotic battle, as they looked towards the source of the voice. In front of the stone platform. In front of the stone platform where the 3 lifetimes flower bloomed, a dark figure was standing there. He gently plucked the 3 lifetimes flower, with a faint smile on his lips. Ghost Tao Hierarch? In the next moment, everyone stopped fighting and looked at the person in shock and anger. Ghost Dao Hierarch. A person with an extremely weak presence. Chapter 1809. Ever since he stepped onto the ancient path of stars, he had kept a low profile, almost causing people to forget about his existence. Even when he entered the ancient Deadlands, he did not fight with anyone. He was almost alone. On top of that, he did not even take part in the battle between the Forbidden Lands. He had executed the demon god art to conceal himself as much as possible. Yi Xian had noticed that the immortal god lord was missing after the human Dao master's reminder. At that time, Yi Xian had vaguely sensed that something was wrong, but he had suppressed this feeling after the immortal god lord had appeared. Now that he thought about it, it was not the immortal god lord that was missing, but the ghost god Great Dao. The mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. It turned out that the oriole was not Yi Xian, but the ghost god Great Dao, who had been hiding and waiting to strike at the most critical moment. At this moment, Yi Xian realized that he had been too careless. None of these taboos were simple. They were all extremely shrewd and cunning. However, it was too late to regret now. The 3 lifetimes flower had fallen into the ghost god Great Dao's hands. In fact, Yi Xian could not be blamed for neglecting the ghost god Great Dao. It was because he had not interacted with this person at all. Moreover, the ghost god Great Dao had not attracted much attention along the way. Moreover, the ghost god Great Dao that he cultivated was the most unpredictable. Not even Yi Xian had noticed him when he had purposely concealed himself. Weren't the other taboos the same? Ghost god Great Dao, hand over the flower. Aeon Shadow's eyes were terrifyingly cold. He gave up on Yi Xian and walked toward the ghost god Great Dao, looking at the 3 lifetimes flower with extreme greed. Aeon Shadow was not the only one. The other taboos' eyes were also cold as they surrounded the ghost god Great Dao. Clearly, the 3 lifetimes flower was too important to the taboos. No matter who obtained the flower, they would not let it go. Ha ha ha. The ghost god Great Dao was illusory and unpredictable. Forbidden death light swirled around him. But there were also terrifying ghostly shadows overlapping with him. Now that the flower is in my hands, do you think I will hand it over? The ghost Dao Supreme sighed and said, "You really are blinded by greed. I've been waiting for this moment for over a dozen chaos universes. You juniors are still far from being wise enough to realize that." Judging from the words of the ghost Dao Divine Venerable, this old man had existed for a very long time, probably longer than the primal chaos Divine Venerable and the ancient shadow. No wonder he could wait until now to make a move. Rumble. Murderous intent filled the air as death rays rumbled. The taboo sovereigns stepped closer and closer. However, before they could reach him, the ghost path divine sovereign smiled contemptuously. What he did next caused the taboo sovereigns to roar with hatred. They were all shocked and enraged. "You dare?" Wang. The ghost Dao Divine Venerate opened his mouth wide. He actually wanted to imitate Yi Xian and swallow the 3 lifetimes flower into his stomach to refine it. But in the next moment an extremely strange thing happened. Ah! The ghost Dao Supreme howled in pain. The 3 lifetimes flower that he was about to swallow was now emitting a tricolored illusory light. The tricolored light was strange and terrifying. It kept melting away the death rays on his body, turning him into a skeleton in an instant. Crack! In just an instant, the white bones fell to the ground one by one. A gust of wind blew, and these white bones strangely turned into ashes and disappeared. No, but that wasn't the end. The ghost Dao Supreme's body had turned to dust, but his soul remained, screaming in fear in the void. What happened next sent chills down the spines of the taboo sovereigns. 3 lifetimes flower, a tricolored strange flower. This strange flower that could turn a dead person into a living person actually floated in the air. The 3-colored light enveloped the ghost Dao Supreme God's soul, and a terrifying wail that made one's scalp tingle came from his soul. Why is this happening? Why? No. I don't want to die. Boom. In the end, the ghost Dao Supreme didn't even leave his soul behind. His soul was scattered, and his body and soul were destroyed. Thud. 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 When this terrifying and strange thing happened, Many taboo sovereigns were so frightened that they subconsciously retreated, and an extremely panicked atmosphere was born. A strange flower floated in the void. 3 lifetimes flower, 3 colors swirled. This flower was beautiful and mesmerizing. But now, many taboo sovereigns were afraid of it, and no one dared to take a step forward to pluck it. Impossible, absolutely impossible. Ancient legends say that the 3 lifetimes flower can bring the dead back to life. How can this be? The heartless person screamed in fear. She couldn't believe that this would happen, but she saw the ghost Tao Supreme's tragic death with her own eyes. This made her extremely fearful. Impossible, I don't believe it. The death god roared crazily. He strode toward the flower with a hideous and twisted expression. He reached out his hand to touch the flower, but just as his hand touched the tricolored light, his hand strangely melted and spread to his entire body. Puffed! The death god's expression changed drastically. He cut off his hand with one slash, and only then did he stop the tricolored light from spreading to his body. But this also caused him to break out in cold sweat. Primordial 3 calamity flames. Suddenly, an extremely heavy voice was heard, and it woke everyone up instantly. They looked toward the source of the voice, and saw that it was the Chaos God Supreme. What is the Primordial 3 calamity flames? Wang Guangying quickly asked. It was obviously his first time hearing this term. The other taboo sovereigns also looked at the Chaos God Supreme, knowing that he must know the origin of the tricolored light. Sigh. The Chaos God Supreme sighed bitterly. He looked at the tricolored light on the 3 lifetimes flower in a daze, and he looked extremely dispirited. He also told a legend about the Primordial 3 calamity flames. An old legend. After the Primordial Age was destroyed, the Primordial Age was born. The tricolored flame appeared in the world, and it could melt everything. It could even turn the laws of the eternal universe into ashes. The tricolored flame did not exist in the universe, and it existed outside of the 3,000 great paths. There was once a powerful being in the Primordial Age who relied on the tricolored flame to dominate the entire Primordial Age. It could be said that no one dared to provoke him. Unfortunately, there were too many shocking people in the Primordial Age, and this powerful being died in the hands of even more powerful beings. Since then, the Primordial 3 calamity flames have become a legend. It was just that no one expected it to appear here and turn into the 3 lifetimes flower. I understand now. Suddenly, Wang Guangying seemed to have remembered something. His face was extremely gloomy, and there was a deep sense of helplessness in his eyes. This 3 lifetimes flower is formed by the Primordial 3 calamity flames. This flower can indeed turn the dead into a living person, but the price is not something we can bear. Wang Guangying slowly explained, and he even came up with a conclusion that no one could accept. The 3 lifetimes flower was formed by the Primordial 3 calamity flames, and it could burn everything. Naturally, it could also burn away the deathly aura on their bodies. By melting away the forbidden deathly aura and regenerating vitality, one could naturally become a living person again. However, there was one thing that should not be forgotten. The Primordial 3 calamity flames were too terrifying. When they were melting the forbidden deathly aura, they were also melting the body and soul. The Ghost Tao Divine Supreme was the best answer. Even a powerful existence like the Ghost Tao Divine Supreme could not survive the Primordial 3 calamity flames, so the others had even less confidence. At this moment, the 3 lifetimes flower was right in front of everyone, but none of these forbidden figures stepped forward to pick it. Although they desperately wanted to become a living person, they had just seen how terrifying the Primordial 3 calamity flames were. No one had the confidence to withstand such flames. Chapter 1810. What a joke! What a joke! The supreme treasure that everyone was fighting over just a moment ago had now become a hot potato. No one dared to take it. A heavy atmosphere was brewing. Every taboo figure was frowning, because no one could withstand the terrifying power of the immemorial 3 tribulation flames. Want to turn into a living person? What a joke! Let's see if you have the courage to do so. Unfortunately, none of these taboo figures dared to take it. This was no longer a matter of courage. Knowing that they would die, they naturally wouldn't be so foolish as to try. What a joke. Don't tell me you don't want this 3 lifetimes flower anymore? Suddenly, Yi Xian broke the oppressive atmosphere. His voice was slightly mocking, causing the taboo figure's expressions to change. Since everyone has given up on this wondrous flower, then I, Yi Xian, won't hold back. Yi Xian smiled coldly. Under everyone's astonished gazes, he strode towards the flower. Clearly, he was going to take it. Yi Daoyu. The human Dao master hurriedly stopped Yi Xian. However, Yi Xian gave her a resolute look, causing the human Dao master to swallow his words. This brat. The undying heaven master's gaze was gloomy. He stared at Yi Xian's back, the fear in his eyes growing stronger. Perhaps others would think that Yi Xian was courting death. However, as an old rival of Yi Xian, he knew that Yi Xian was someone who could always create miracles. If Yi Xian wasn't confident, he wouldn't be courting death to take this wondrous flower. As the saying goes, the person who understands you the most may not be your friend, but it would definitely be your enemy. The undying heaven master fully explained the meaning of this sentence. Yi Xian was indeed confident, which was why he was going to take this wondrous flower. Dong, dong, dong. Yi Xian walked slowly. With every step he took, it was as if he was stepping on the hearts of these forbidden characters. Everyone stared fixedly at Yi Xian's actions as different thoughts arose in their minds. Some people hoped that Yi Xian would die under the ancient 3 tribulation flames, while others hoped that he could successfully obtain the flower. The atmosphere at this moment was extremely solemn. Finally, Yi Xian arrived at the 3 lives 3 worlds flower. The immemorial 3 calamities flame was incomparably beautiful. It only looked like a 3-colored halo without any form of flame. However, Yi Xian could feel that the tricolored halo was extremely terrifying. A layer of sweat even appeared on Yi Xian's forehead. That's why Yi Xian's heart tightened as he slowly exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. Finally, he raised his hand and reached for the 3 lifetimes flower. Boom! The moment Yi Xian touched the ancient 3 calamities flame, the terrifying tricolored halo instantly wrapped around Yi Xian's palm, before spreading to his entire body at an extremely fast speed. He's dead for sure. Eternal Shadow muttered coldly. He had already sentenced Yi Xian to death. He's simply crazy, Chess Ancestor said coldly. Yi Daoyu. Human Dao Master's tone was filled with worry. Yeah. A heavy grunt came from Yi Xian's mouth. His face instantly contorted as terrifying veins surfaced on his forehead. Clearly, he was enduring immense pain. Crack. Like a jade artifact shattering or porcelain shattering, Yi Xian's palm cracked horribly. Then his entire body cracked like porcelain. One could vaguely see the flesh and bones in his body. Boom! The next moment, the ancient 3 calamities flame completely erupted. The terrifying tricolored halo drowned Yi Xian and instantly devoured him. He's finished. The primal chaos god said coldly when he saw this scene. If Yi Xian had severed one of his arms like the death god, he might have had a chance to escape the ancient 3 calamities flames devouring. However, it was too late now. Yi Xian's only fate was death. No, he's not dead yet. Suddenly, the undying heaven lord muttered gloomily. He stared fixedly at Yi Xian, who was being devoured by the ancient 3 calamities flame, as a look of bewilderment flashed across his eyes. Although Yi Xian was engulfed by the ancient 3 calamities flame, he did not collapse. This also meant that he had withstood the ancient 3 calamities flames roasting. The undying heaven lord's exclamation immediately caused the expressions of the other taboo figures to change drastically. They all looked at Yi Xian in horror, their eyes filled with complicated emotions. Time passed bit by bit. A total of 7 days had passed, but the ancient 3 calamities flame was still burning. This made the other taboo figures anxious. They did not know what was going on with Yi Xian at this moment. Boom! All of a sudden, a loud explosion sounded out as the blazing primordial 3 tribulation flames slowly dissipated. Yi Xian's figure was actually faintly revealed, and when the flames completely disappeared, Yi Xian appeared in front of everyone's eyes as if nothing had happened. He actually survived. Aeon Shadow growled in horror. He rubbed his eyes hard, unable to believe what he was seeing. Aeon Shadow was not the only one who fell into a state of shock. The other taboo figures also looked at each other in shock, unable to recover for a long time. No one could understand how Yi Xian had survived the ancient Three Calamities flame. One should know that these flames could even burn a taboo figure to death. How could Yi Xian have survived? In fact, no one knew that Yi Xian dared to collect the 3 lifetimes flower, because he had a certain level of confidence in himself. First of all, although the ancient Three Calamities flame was terrifying, it targeted the death aura of a taboo figure. Yi Xian was not a taboo dead person. He was a living person. Moreover, Yi Xian had merged with the heavenly gate, and was nurtured by the power of reincarnation. With his power of reincarnation, he could withstand the burning of the Three Calamities flame. Most importantly, there was a mysterious symbol formed from an ancient battle soul on his forehead. This symbol was like a protective talisman, and it gave Yi Xian a lot of confidence. Therefore, Yi Xian only dared to collect this strange flower after careful consideration. He even had a certain level of confidence in facing the Three Calamities flame. Sure enough, Yi Xian had succeeded. Although Yi Xian had initially suffered, he still managed to survive the ancient Three Calamities flame with the help of the power of reincarnation and the mysterious symbol. Moreover, after experiencing the burning of the divine flame, Yi Xian's physical body and spirit had improved again. His entire person could be said to be flawless. At this moment, Yi Xian held the 3 lifetimes flower in his hand. His entire body was as dazzling as a piece of unpolished jade. He faintly revealed a mysterious and imposing aura that made people not dare to look directly at him. Die! All of a sudden, just as everyone was still in shock, an extremely sinister roar was heard. A white light suddenly charged towards Yi Xian. The terrifying taboo death aura was fully released. White Sovereign King. The one who attacked Yi Xian was this person. This attack was White Sovereign King's strongest attack. Even the great Tao of Chaos and Yin and Yang were compatible with her. Her attack was not to kill Yi Xian, but to snatch the 3 lifetimes flower in his hand. At this moment, the 3 lifetimes flower was not protected by the Three Calamities flame. It was the best time to snatch it. This also caused the other taboo figures to wake up. Their faces instantly turned ferocious as they prepared to snatch it. Chapter 1811. You're courting death. Without waiting for the taboo characters to attack, Yi Xian faced the White Sovereign King's strongest attack. His expression was sinister and filled with mockery. The 3 lifetimes flower in his hand exploded with a terrifying tricolored halo. It was the immemorial Three Calamities flames that had just disappeared. Boom! The immemorial 3 tribulations flames erupted, and the terrifying tricolored halo swept towards the White Sovereign King, like a flood of ferocious beasts. No! Why is this happening? In an instant, the immemorial Three Calamities flames engulfed the White Sovereign King. Her entire body was incinerated as large amounts of black smoke rose from her body. In just a short moment, her entire body turned into a wisp of black smoke and dissipated. Her body and soul were destroyed and turned into ashes. This was the White Sovereign King's fate. She had never expected that the immemorial Three Calamities flames would appear once again. Furthermore, she had been burned alive by the immemorial Three Calamities flames. She had died with grievances. At the same time, the taboo characters who were about to snatch the 3 lifetimes flower held their breaths. The taboo death lights that had just erupted from their bodies dissipated. Everyone looked at Yi Xian with fear in their eyes. Even the chess ancestor unconsciously took half a step back. Terrifying. Too terrifying. The appearance of the immemorial Three Calamities flames gave these taboo characters a ruthless blow. It could be said that they were caught off guard. No one dared to take half a step forward, because the immemorial Three Calamities flames could not taint them. Fellow Taoists, are you planning to attack me? Yi Xian held the 3 lifetimes flower in his hand, as the immemorial Three Calamities flames burned with tricolored halo on the flower. A contemptuous smile appeared on Yi Xian's lips. Faced with Yi Xian's questioning, these taboo characters' expressions were uncertain. However, There was fear in their eyes. Seeing these taboo characters remain silent, Yi Xian sneered. With a flip of his hand, he kept the 3 lifetimes flower. This made the taboo characters secretly sigh in relief. They were really afraid that Yi Xian would use the 3 primordial tribulation flames to attack them. But now, it seemed that Yi Xian had no intention of attacking them. This made them feel slightly relieved. In fact, these taboos did not know that it was not that Yi Xian did not want to kill them, but that Yi Xian could not do it. The 3 lifetimes flower was the source of the primordial 3 calamity flames. Every time it was used, the power of the 3 lifetimes flower would be depleted. Yi Xian wanted to use this item to break through to the next realm. How could he bear to use it to kill these taboo characters? Moreover, these taboo figures were already on their guard. Even if Yi Xian wanted to use the primordial 3 tribulation flames to kill them, he might not succeed. Moreover, Yi Xian had been lucky enough to obtain an ancient imprint from the primordial 3 tribulation flames. It was also because of this that he could temporarily control this flame. It was not worth using it to deal with these forbidden characters. After all, he was about to head to the 81st Ancient Divine Palace. There was something he wanted to retrieve in there. If he could avoid using the primordial 3 tribulation flames, he would not do so. He had to make preparations to enter the 81st Ancient Divine Palace. Buzz! Just as the atmosphere was heavy, a door slowly opened before everyone's eyes. An ancient divine light bloomed, causing everyone's souls to tremble. Let's go! The taboo characters took a deep look at Yi Xian, and immediately stepped through the door. Clearly, Yi Xian had obtained the 3 lifetimes flower. Now that no one could take it, they could only covet the opportunities in the 81st Ancient Divine Palace. Let's go! Yi Xian called out to the human Dao Master, and quickly stepped through the door. There was a faint excitement in his eyes. Yi Xian did not know what was in the 81st Ancient Divine Palace. However, he could sense that this item was very important to him. It was related to his future. The peak of the ancient divine mountain. The void rippled. Yi Xian stepped out of the door and appeared in the outside world. The scene before him stunned Yi Xian. A heavenly palace. A vast and majestic heavenly palace. This heavenly palace was modeled and ancient. No one knew how long it had existed. It was as if it had a long and unknown history in the distant and unknown past. Just looking at it made one feel like prostrating in worship. It made one feel extremely insignificant. However, the heavenly palace's door was tightly shut. Mysterious symbols were engraved on the stone door, forming an indecipherable pattern. Rumble! Suddenly, a divine light soared into the sky, and a stone tablet came into everyone's sight. Eternally suppressing the ancient. Eternally suppressing the heavens and earth. The stone tablet took root in front of the heavenly palace's door. The words eternally suppressing the ancient were emitting an unparalleled power. Just the aura released by the stone tablet forced the taboo characters to retreat. This stone tablet? Yi Xian was stunned. He stared blankly at the words on the stone tablet. A look of shock flashed across his eyes. He clearly remembered that this stone tablet was halfway up the mountain. How did it appear at the peak of the ancient divine mountain? Moreover, Yi Xian carefully noticed that a terrifying crack had appeared on the stone tablet. It was as if someone had bombarded it with an unimaginable force. Let's go! When Yi Xian stared at the stone tablet, the taboo characters had no intention of staying. Instead, they quickly shot toward the heavenly palace, trying to push open the door and enter the heavenly palace. Bang! 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 Something extremely terrifying happened. When the taboo characters touched the heavenly palace's door, the mysterious symbols engraved on the door flowed. An extremely terrifying force erupted and sent all the taboo characters flying. Barf! The taboo characters spat out mouthfuls of blood. They slammed heavily onto the ground. The death aura around them dissipated. They had suffered terrible injuries. What kind of power is this? The ancient shadow kept coughing up blood. He looked at the tightly shut door of the heavenly palace in horror. There was an indescribable reverence in his eyes. Rumble! Suddenly, the stone tablet that was rooted in the ground broke out. The words on the stone tablet erupted with ancient divine light. This divine light spread out under Yi Xian's feet and pushed Yi Xian toward the heavenly palace's door. A divine object has a spirit, waiting for eternity. At this moment, Yi Xian's mind suddenly calmed down. He allowed the world-suppressing heavenly tablet to push him forward until he reached the heavenly palace's door. Rumble, the world-suppressing heavenly tablet, forever suppressing the ancient times. The heavenly tablet danced and circled in front of Yi Xian. It was exuding an aura of joy. It was as if the person it had been waiting for had finally arrived. Yi Xian subconsciously raised his hand. The world-suppressing heavenly tablet obediently fell into his palm. Terrifying divine light bloomed from the heavenly tablet. However, it did not hurt Yi Xian at all. Such a scene caused the hearts of many taboo figures to tremble as they watched. At this moment, they finally dared to confirm that Yi Xian was definitely one of the small group of people that shocked the heavens and the earth. Otherwise, the mysterious stone tablet that had existed for countless years couldn't possibly resonate with Yi Xian. Chapter 1812. Eternity passed, accompanied by solitude. At this moment, Yi Xian was very calm, and there was a sense of peace that he had never felt before. This feeling was very sudden, but it truly appeared in his heart. He raised his hand and pushed the door open. Yi Xian seemed to be doing something very ordinary. When Yi Xian's palm pressed against the door, the mysterious symbol on his forehead flickered violently, and the mysterious runes on the stone door actually began to rotate. Eternity and desolation. It was unknown if the taboos were seeing things, but at this moment, Yi Xian's back became blurry in their eyes. Their bodies and minds trembled violently, as if Yi Xian had turned into another person at this moment. Rumble. Eternity sealed, the heavenly door opened. Amidst the violent rumbling, the door that had been sealed for eternity opened, and an ancient desolate aura pervaded the air. Huang. The sound of eternal thunder shook the heavens. This voice seemed to have crossed the river of time and spread to the present. It rumbled out from the heavenly palace, shaking people's souls. Wang. At this moment, the only one who was not affected was Yi Xian. While everyone's souls were shaking and dizzy, Yi Xian had already stepped into the last heavenly palace. Who is this guy? The only one who was not affected was the undying Heaven Lord. He had some unknown treasure on him that allowed him to not be affected by the sound. He only looked at Yi Xian's back in shock. Go! The undying Heaven Lord did not dare to delay, and quickly chased after Yi Xian into the heavenly palace. He could not let his character fail, or prison would not let him go. After a long time, the taboos woke up one after another. When they saw Yi Xian and the undying entering the heavenly palace, they were afraid. They looked at each other, unsure if they should enter or not. These old taboos were not stupid. They had already sensed the terror of this heavenly palace. It was definitely closely related to Yi Xian. If they entered, they might not be able to come out alive. Forget it, forget it. The 10,000 beasts do not have such fortune. Farewell, everyone. The 10,000 beasts' ancestor chose to retreat because he knew his own cultivation. Even if he entered the heavenly palace and encountered a great opportunity, it was not something he could compete for, let alone be ordinary among these taboos. It was important to know one's own limits. The 10,000 beasts' ancestor was very clear about his own situation and left the mountain without looking back. Gutless rat. Wang Guyin snorted coldly. He gritted his teeth and strode into the heavenly palace. He was unwilling to retreat just like that. Idiot. He is clearly the reincarnation of one of the three strongest eras. Trying to snatch the fortune from him now is just courting death. The death god spoke in a cold and disdainful voice. Although he was unwilling, he was extremely rational, and also chose to retreat at this moment. After all, he did not want to die here. Boom! Chaos Divine Supremacy did not waste any time, as he chose to enter the heavenly palace. As for Chess Ancestor, he was extremely ambitious. Despite knowing the dangers, he chose to enter with Chaos Divine Supremacy. There was no need to mention the human Tao Master. Since Yi Xian had entered, it was impossible for her to retreat. As for the heartless person, She hesitated for a long time before she steeled her heart and chose to enter the last heavenly palace. Ancient heavenly palace. Divine flames curled about, illuminating the void. Ancient lanterns lit up one after another, and ancient and unknown murals were carved on the walls. The heavenly palace was extremely simple. It was so simple that nothing superfluous could be seen. There was only a dark Thearchus throne in the depths of the heavenly palace. The throne was withered and decayed, and it was covered in cracks. An ancient and desolate aura was faintly emitted, as though it had existed here for a very, very long time. The moment Yi Xian stepped in, he could not take his eyes off the dark Thearchus throne. Suddenly, an inexplicable voice sounded in his heart. Go and retrieve your memories. A voice that seemed to transcend the eternal universe was heard, constantly roaring in Yi Xian's ears. This voice was extremely familiar to him, as though he was roaring it himself. An inexplicable feeling was pushing Yi Xian forward. As he walked step by step towards the dark Thearchus throne, something terrifying happened. It was as though the Lord of Eternity had returned. It was as though the universe was in turmoil. Gray light rose from the heavenly palace. Tao patterns were even growing under Yi Xian's feet. A desolate aura was faintly released from Yi Xian's body. At that moment, Yi Xian entered an indescribable state. He only had eyes for the dark Thearchus throne. It was as though he would take back what belonged to him, as long as he sat on it. Stop him. All of a sudden, a violent roar sounded in the undying Heaven Lord's heart. It instantly woke him up because the owner of the voice was Prison, a person he respected greatly. Boom! In the next moment, the undying Heaven Lord attacked. However, this time, he did not use his own cultivation. Instead, he attacked with a black scroll. Rumble! The black scroll was extremely strange. It was so black that it made one's heart tremble. It also released an extremely terrifying light that instantly suppressed Yi Xian. Shocking absolute earth eternal destruction. The black scroll was simply terrifying to the extreme. Even the power of the heavenly palace could not suppress it. The unparalleled power that shook the heavens seemed to want to suppress Yi Xian under the black scroll. Be careful, the human Tao master cried out in alarm. Her jade-like hands flew, and she unleashed a powerful forbidden technique, hoping to destroy the strange black scroll. Pfft! Unfortunately, the human Tao master's forbidden technique was like child's play. Not to mention destroying the terrifying scroll, it did not even succeed in touching it. It directly turned into nothingness. Bang! Pfft! The black scroll only released a remnant wave, but it directly sent the human Tao master flying. Her body was badly mutilated, and she crashed heavily into the ground. A shocking divine item that suppressed eternity. This black scroll was an item in the hands of a shocking figure. It also contained unimaginable power. How could the human Tao master provoke it? Rumble! The black scroll unfurled. The sun, moon, stars, mountains, rivers, ancient beasts, spirits of all ages. Everything appeared in the black scroll. There was also the sound of scriptures being chanted throughout eternity. Suppress! The scroll could cover the sky, cover the earth, and destroy the world. It directly suppressed Yi Xian's head, causing him to stop in his tracks. The terrifying suppression of eternity was too terrifying. It was not something Yi Xian could withstand. Suppress! Merciless suppression. Although it did not show any killing intent towards Yi Xian, nor did it threaten Yi Xian's life. Just the suppression of the black scroll alone caused Yi Xian to be unable to move at all. Destroy this emperor's throne. Quickly destroy this emperor's throne. At the same time, a violent roar sounded in the undying Heaven Master's ears. It shook the undying Heaven Master's mind, but he did not dare to be careless. He rushed towards the Dark Emperor's throne. He even raised his spiritual energy to the extreme, wanting to destroy this Dark Emperor's throne in one fell swoop. Chapter 1813. Boom! The forbidden death ray exploded. The undying Heaven Lord's eyes were bloodshot and ferocious. A black spike suddenly appeared in his hand, releasing a terrifying power. He wanted to shatter the Emperor's throne with a single blow, eternally suppressing the ancient. Rumble! The world-suppressing heavenly steel was a divine object with a spirit. The divine light that penetrated through the ages burst out from the steel and crashed towards the undying Heaven Lord. Bang! There was an explosion, and the chaos trembled. Before the undying Heaven Lord could shatter the Emperor's throne, the world-suppressing heavenly steel had already landed on his body. Boom! With just one blow, the undying Heaven Lord exploded into a bloody mist. The black spike in his hand fell to the ground. However, it was not over yet. The world-suppressing heavenly steel had its own spirit. The steel exploded with an unparalleled divine power and crashed towards the black scroll. Bang! When the two divine objects collided, the entire ancient celestial palace exploded. This had already surpassed the forbidden death ray. It was a power that could only be unleashed in the three great eras. It even caused the entire ancient celestial palace to show signs of collapsing. Woo 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 woo. Suddenly, a strange wind appeared in the celestial palace and blew past a few forbidden figures who were still in a daze. In the next moment, something strange and terrifying happened. Be it the chaotic divine venerable, the eternal shadow, the heartless man, the chess ancestor, or even the severely injured human Tao master. Their gazes were all dull, as if they were being controlled by some mysterious power. Destroy the Emperor's throne. The forbidden figures roared in their hearts at the same time. This also caused them to unleash their forbidden death ray towards the Emperor's throne. All sorts of powerful forbidden techniques were being prepared to shatter the Emperor's throne in one fell swoop. Suddenly, at this critical moment, the entire ancient celestial palace buzzed and shook. Mysterious patterns appeared on the mottled and blurry walls. Then, they gathered together and a mysterious word appeared on the wall. Desolation. The one and only since ancient times, suppressing through the ages. No one could recognize this mysterious word, but Yi Xian recognized it immediately. Yi Xian could not move his body or speak, but his thoughts did not stop. When he saw this word, he knew that he did not recognize it, but he still recognized it. Boom! The word desolate filled the air, suppressing the ancient times. As soon as the word appeared, all the taboo figures were sent flying. The ancient desolate aura spread out and suppressed all the taboo figures to the ground. They did not even have the strength to stand up. It was also the appearance of the word desolation that caused the world-suppressing heavenly monuments' divine light to surge. It actually began to gradually suppress the black scroll, allowing Yi Xian's suppressed body to move again. Dong! Yi Xian took a heavy step forward. He didn't know why such a strange thing had happened, but he knew very well that he had to sit on the Emperor's throne at the front. Wang! Just as Yi Xian took his first step, the undying Heaven Lord's shattered body actually started to reform. It was as if there was an indescribable power secretly helping him. Yi Xian, I won't let you have your way. The undying Heaven Lord roared with hatred. He appeared again and picked up the strange black spikes on the ground. He threw them at the Emperor's throne with no regard for his life. You're courting death. Boom! Yi Xian's right foot stomped on the ground, and his entire body shot forward. He punched out with the ancient reincarnation fist, and went straight for the undying Heaven Lord. Bang! The undying Heaven Lord turned around, and instantly collided with Yi Xian's attack. This also caused the two of them to be sent flying. Neither of them successfully arrived in front of the Emperor's throne. Undying Heaven Blade. The undying Heaven Lord roared ferociously. The Tao of Nirvana combined with the forbidden power of death erupted with his peak cultivation. A terrifying black blade light appeared and slashed towards Yi Xian violently. Eternal Dream. Yi Xian directly activated the Eternal Dream and combined it with the reincarnation power of the Heaven Gate unification. He punched towards the undying Heaven Lord. This attack was earth-shattering. It also used all of Yi Xian's cultivation. It was a battle of life and death. At this moment, Yi Xian didn't dare to hold back. He was getting more and more anxious. If he didn't get rid of the undying Heaven Lord, he wouldn't be able to sit on this mysterious Emperor's throne. Boom! Kacha! One punch. This was Yi Xian's strongest punch. The 12 forms of the eternal reincarnation fist combined with the reincarnation power. Even a forbidden character would be in danger of dying. Kacha! Yi Xian's punch shattered the undying Heaven Blade light. The remaining power of this punch didn't diminish, and directly penetrated the undying Heaven Lord's chest. Horrifying black blood spurted out, and the undying Heaven Lord screamed in agony. One punch. With just a single strike, he was actually defeated by Yi Xian's attack. Scram! Boom! Yi Xian didn't give in to anyone. The eternal reincarnation fist, combined with the great dream of eternity, released the most terrifying power. Yi Xian abruptly withdrew his fist, which was already covered in the blood of the undying Heaven Lord. Bang! Yi Xian took a step forward and directly blasted the undying Heaven Lord flying. He fiercely smashed onto the ground as blood continuously sprayed out from his mouth. Clang! The strange black thorn in the undying Heaven Lord's hand fell again. However, Yi Xian didn't have time to pay attention to it, because the emperor's throne was right in front of him. He had to sit on this emperor's throne. This was the most important thing. You're really a piece of trash. Wang. Time seemed to have stopped and space seemed to have frozen. With a low voice, the entire ancient divine palace seemed to have come to a standstill. A figure that could shock the heavens and destroy the earth. This figure walked out of the void. His body was illusory and unpredictable. No one could sense his existence. Even the light around him made people's hearts palpitate. Prison he finally couldn't take it anymore and walked out personally. However, he didn't even bother to look at the undying Heaven Lord. It was as if the undying Heaven Lord was just a dead dog that had lost its value. It's you. Yi Xian was shocked. Although he'd never seen Prison before, just the other party's eyes were enough to let him know who he was. Death Cage. He was the pair of eyes that had appeared in the Death Cage, and he was the owner of those eyes. Suppress. Prison didn't respond to Yi Xian. Instead, he lifted his finger and pointed at the world suppression heavenly steel. There was no terrifying power, but just a word from him caused the world suppression heavenly steel to tremble violently. The steel became dim. You. Who are you? The taboo figures also woke up at this moment. However, when they saw the mysterious figure in front of them, their eyes were filled with extreme fear. Crossing the universe and breaking through the universe. I am immortal and indestructible. You juniors don't have the right to know who I am. Boom. Prison spoke calmly. His aura was deep and heavy. Immediately, these taboo figures were sent flying. They didn't even have a chance to resist. Puff. Puff. The taboo figures spat out blood. Their bodies were badly mutilated. Even the death light around them was collapsing. They looked at Prison with extreme fear. Chapter 1814. Earth-shattering. The taboo of the taboo. The legendary strongest person of the three great eras. Does the legendary person really exist? Several taboo overlords murmured in shock. Their bodies and minds were trembling at this moment. In the face of this small group of people, they deeply felt what it meant to be powerless. Everything was silent, and the heavens and earth were silent. At this moment, the entire ancient celestial palace was extremely quiet. Even the drop of a needle could be heard. However, everyone held their breaths, not daring to disturb this strange silence. Prison stood with his hands behind his back. His appearance could not be seen clearly, but his eyes were fixed on Yi Xian. At times, killing intent flashed across his eyes, and at other times fear. There were also some mixed feelings. You know me? Yi Xian did not move. He calmed himself down and spoke calmly. His eyes were as deep as an ancient pool as he looked at Prison. Of course I know you. In fact, I have known you for a very, very long time. As long as the beginning of time. As long as the beginning of time. As long as the beginning of time. As long as I can't sleep at night. So long that I yearn for you even in my dreams. Prison said. Then I'm really honored to be remembered by such an earth-shattering big shot. Yi Xian laughed self-deprecatingly. Clang. Prison raised his hand, and the strange black thorn shot towards Yi Xian. This allowed Yi Xian to catch it in his hand. I'll give you a chance to leave this place alive. I only need you to hold this thing in your hand and shatter this emperor's throne. Then, you can leave safely and use the 3 lifetimes flower to break through to the next realm. Prison said softly. What if I don't agree? Yi Xian held the black thorn and looked at Prison indifferently. If you don't agree, die. Prison didn't waste any time. He only spat out these 4 words. Although his voice was very soft and didn't seem to have any power, no one doubted his words. This was because he was one of the few people who could shock the heavens and destroy the earth. He was also the most terrifying existence in the eternal universe. The eternal universe existed for all eternity. Even the eternal universe couldn't destroy them. This kind of person was already terrifying to the extreme. Who could keep them in check? Die. Hee. In the face of Prison's threat, Yi Xian smiled. His smile made the tense atmosphere even weirder, and Prison's aura fluctuated slightly. I'll just stand here and let you kill me. I'm just afraid that you won't dare to do it. Suddenly, Yi Xian's smile disappeared, and his expression turned cold. Even though the person standing in front of him was a terrifying existence, he didn't give the other party any face. Boom! The universe was in chaos as space-time collapsed. Prison's aura was in disorder, and flames of fury were burning in his eyes, scaring the taboos so much that their faces turned pale. They were deeply afraid that this legendary figure would kill all of them in a fit of rage. Unfortunately, Yi Xian didn't move at all, and he seemed extremely calm from the beginning until the end. It was as if he was sure that Prison wouldn't dare make a move against him. As expected, Prison's aura gradually calmed down. Even the killing intent that had erupted from him was dissipating. There was no longer any ripples on his body. You're still as confident as ever, be it in the past or now. Prison said lightly and continued. You're right. I won't kill you. But do you think I can't do anything to you? Yi Xian's expression changed slightly. He suddenly had a bad feeling, and his brows furrowed slightly. I'll give you a chance now. Destroy this emperor's throne with your own hands. If you don't agree, then I can only seal you here, and you'll never be able to break out. You have to believe that I can do it. Boom! Prison raised his 5 fingers, and an inexplicable gray aura condensed. A feeling of sealing heaven and earth swept towards Yi Xian, causing him to retreat in shock. Terrifying. Terrifying to the extreme. It had to be said that the so-called terrifying existence wasn't something that Yi Xian could fathom. People who had reached this level were simply too terrifying, and they had plenty of methods to deal with him. In the beginning, Yi Xian still had some confidence. His confidence came from the other party's fear. If Yi Xian didn't guess wrong, the other party was afraid of him from his previous life. But now, it seemed that Yi Xian had underestimated the person before him. Since the other party dared to appear and force him, it meant that the other party definitely had methods to keep him in check. Danger. A great danger that had never happened before. This kind of danger didn't involve life and death, but Yi Xian could only compromise. Because once he was sealed by the other party, he would really be in a situation where he couldn't even beg for death. Alright, I promise you. Yi Xian was very decisive. He didn't try to stall for time, because his tricks couldn't fool the other party. You've made the best choice for you. Go. Prison nodded slowly. He wasn't afraid of Yi Xian playing tricks, because with his immortal cultivation, Yi Xian wouldn't be able to do anything to him. Alright. Yi Xian's expression was calm. He slowly raised the black spike in his hand, as if he was going to destroy this emperor's throne with his own hands. Streaks of terrifying black light flickered on the black spike, erupting with an extremely frightening fluctuation. Do it! Prison roared. His eyes flashed with excitement. As long as Yi Xian destroyed this emperor's throne, he could sit back and relax. Lao Tzu will kill you first. Suddenly, a sinister roar came from Yi Xian's mouth. He attacked with the strange black spike in his hand, but it wasn't aimed at the Dark Emperor's throne. Instead, it was aimed at Prison crazily. At this moment, Yi Xian exploded with all his cultivation. The Heaven's Gate was opened, and Great Ancient Dream was pushed to the extreme. This attack was the strongest attack he had ever made. Coupled with the strange black spike in his hand, it was truly a terrifying attack that could destroy eternity. I knew you wouldn't compromise so easily. Prison muttered hatefully. He pointed at Yi Xian with his finger. Although he didn't release any power, it was as if the universe was frozen at this moment. Wang! The world spun, and the universe froze. The killing blow that contained Yi Xian's entire life had actually dissipated into thin air. The strange and terrifying black thorn froze in place. Prison had only used a single finger to block Yi Xian's attack. Moreover, it was so calm that not a single trace of smoke or fire flowed out. Bam! Finger snap, collapsing sky. With a flick of his finger, Yi Xian's entire body was sent flying. A mouthful of blood sprayed out from his mouth, and the heaven gate behind him dimmed and dissipated. The great dream of eternity on his body shattered without a trace. Bam! Yi Xian crashed to the ground, and the black spike in his hand rolled to Prison's feet. Strong. Too strong. So strong that there was no way to counter it. Shocking absolute land. Sweeping through eternity. Eternal existence of the universe. Undying, indestructible. This was a small group of people that could shock absolute land. This was the eternal being of the eternal universe. Prison's strength wasn't something that anyone could understand. At this moment, Yi Xian was pitifully weak in front of him. You have made me very angry. Boom. Prison took a step forward, and the entire ancient celestial palace shook. A pair of eternal deathly eyes stared at Yi Xian. The terrifying murderous intent was like ancient lightning flashing crazily in his eyes. Chapter 18:15. However, Prison didn't intend to kill Yi Xian, because he didn't want to take this step, because even he might not be able to endure the dangers involved. That person had already disappeared, and he had paid the price with his life. He didn't want to take the risk of forcing out that legendary person. Since you're unwilling to listen to me, I'll seal you here for eternity. Coming to this step was all within Prison's expectations. He could only seal Yi Xian here, because he had no other choice. Prison! Rumble! Prison roared loudly. Rays of black light rose around him, and they quickly transformed into numerous tornadoes and vortexes. The terrifying aura of suppression of eternity spread out. What was prison? Seal, trap, forbid, exterminate. Prison had many meanings. To put it bluntly, it meant a prison. It could imprison anything in the universe, and prevent it from being reincarnated forever. His name was Prison, and from this one could see his origin technique. Woo woo woo. Numerous black tornadoes buzzed, and an earth-shattering sealing force appeared. It faintly transformed into a large prison character. Obviously, it wanted to seal Yi Xian here for eternity, eternally suppressing ancient. Bang! At this moment, the divine object had a spirit, and the heavenly monument suppressed the world. The world suppression heavenly monument that was inscribed with the words eternally suppressing ancient came crashing down towards Prison. A mere heavenly monument dares to act presumptuously before me? Scram! Bang! Prison struck out with his palm, and it directly blasted the world suppression heavenly monument away. Numerous terrifying cracks appeared on the monument. Obviously, it was no match for this earth-shattering existence. Desolation, you've already passed away. Don't ever appear again. Prison stared at Yi Xian, and a complicated expression flashed past his eyes. After that, his gaze became firm, and his 5 fingers slammed down towards Yi Xian. Obviously, he wanted to suppress Yi Xian here for eternity. The desolate era is broken, the immemorial era is in sorrow. The ancient era has dreamt of 1,000 years. My name has been chanted throughout the ages. Who doesn't know of me, Gu Taichu? It was as if an ancient divine voice was transmitted over, as if the primordial ancestors were chanting scriptures. That white robe seemed to have passed through the ages, and that deep whisper seemed to be whispering in the ears of all living beings. That it was as if the Milky Way of the 9 heavens was spinning in reverse, as if the eternal universe was hanging upside down. Everything had returned to its original point, and everything seemed to have returned to its starting point. That white robe fluttered over, and the world-shaking sealing power that Prison had unleashed shattered into pieces. His white robes fluttered in the wind. He was like a character from a legend, but also like an immortal banished from the ancient times. He didn't seem like a mortal, nor did he seem like a god. His appearance was like the most resplendent star in the universe, making it so that no one could look directly at him. Absolute beginning. Roar. When the figure in white floated over, Prison let out a low roar, causing the entire ancient celestial palace to crack. This proved how frightened he was. "He's my man. How dare you touch him?" The figure in white robes spoke indifferently. His temperament was too otherworldly, and all living beings were as insignificant as dust in front of him. Lu Bai, peerless in his generation, the only one throughout the ages. He was the only one who could have such a peerless temperament throughout the entire universe. However, at this moment, Lu Bai gave off a sense of tranquility. His eyes were as bright as the stars, but there were no emotions that a human should have in them. "Brother Bai?" Yi Xian struggled to get up from the ground. He looked at Lu Bai's back in surprise. He didn't expect that Lu Bai would appear in front of him at the last moment, and even save him. Unfortunately, Yi Xian's call didn't make Lu Bai turn around, and there wasn't even a trace of fluctuation. This made Yi Xian's heart skip a beat, and he looked at Lu Bai's back with a heavy heart. Yi Xian suddenly felt a sense of unfamiliarity growing between him and Lu Bai. It was as if the person standing in front of him was extremely unfamiliar, and he didn't seem to be the best friend he knew. "You actually came back to life in this life?" Prison let out a low roar, trembling. He stared at Lu Bai, and the aura around him was slightly disordered, proving that his heart was extremely unsettled. Life and death, illusion and destruction. Everything is within the will of absolute beginning. What is life and what is death? Lu Bai said faintly. "Ha ha ha." Suddenly, Prison let out a maniacal laugh, and then clapped his hands, saying, "Good, good, good. The number one person in the Archean era is indeed powerful. Even after so many years, you're still as fearless as before, and even life and death are within your control. However, you appeared at this time to stop me from sealing him?" Prison suddenly pointed at Yi Xian, and his voice was extremely cold. "He shouldn't exist. I will personally make him disappear. But there's no need for you to do anything," Lu Bai said calmly. "With just you." Prison laughed. He laughed very loudly, as if he had heard the funniest joke since ancient times. "Back when the Archean era was destroyed, you sought him out for a battle. Only the two of you know the result of that battle. If you, the number one person in the Archean era, really wanted to kill him, you would have done it back then. Why wait until now?" Prison sneered. "The matter between him and me has nothing to do with you. If you don't back down, I will personally destroy you," Lu Bai said with incomparable grace. "Ha ha ha." Prison let out a maniacal laugh, and said, "Absolute beginning, you're still so high and mighty. So what if you were once the number one person in the Archean era? We're both world-shaking and eternally immortal. Can you kill me?" With a single thought, absolute beginning, all things returned to the void. Pop. Lu Bai took a step forward. Archean Dao runes bloomed under his feet, and his white jade-like fingers suddenly pointed at Prison. "Today, I'll see what kind of ability you, the number one person in the Archean era, have." Boom. Prison suddenly attacked. His 5 fingers were like a prison of heaven and earth. He fearlessly clashed with Lu Bai's attack. Rumble. An extremely terrifying thing happened. The two's attack didn't seem to have any terrifying power, but the entire ancient deadland was trembling. The ancient yuan qi that filled the sky was exploding. Terrifying black cracks bloomed all over the ancient deadland, and the ancient deadland was faintly showing signs of collapsing. Boom. Fortunately, the ancient deadland was the last pure land of the ancient era. The entire ancient divine mountain was an extremely terrifying divine mountain that could suppress the world. It barely withstood the attacks of the 2 world-shaking existences. Bang! 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 The battle between the world-shaking existences was extremely strange. There were no great arts flying around, nor were there any laws rioting. There were only 2 light spots streaking across the entire ancient deadland. However, every time they collided, the ancient deadland would crack horribly. If this battle took place in the outside world, the vast chaotic universe would suffer unimaginable damage, and the will of the chaotic universe would descend. However, even if the will of the chaotic universe were to descend, it might not be able to stop these existences. After all, they didn't even take the will of the chaotic universe seriously. Immortal and world-shaking existences. How could these existences be simple? What a joke, what a joke. So you've just awakened. Your strength hasn't fully recovered. How can you fight me? Suddenly a shocking roar sounded. The white figure fell with a loud crash, and a black light flashed in an instant. Two figures appeared in the ancient celestial palace. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.